At Haneda Airport, an employee approaches a man and asks why he has arrived, and the man calmly replies that he is simply returning home to his native country. The worker was stunned with surprise when he learned that the man had been to many countries around the world. He explained that he served in the army, so he often had to travel to different states. He also added that he is a soldier of Britain and holds British citizenship. After checking, the worker returned his passport. The employee warmly greeted Garrett Tiger and wished him a good day. Garrett thanked him in response. He's still nervous during the border check. Anxiety is well known to him because by military orders he had already had to perform a lot of different tasks, so when the officer pays attention to him and starts asking questions, it does not surprise him. Arriving in Japan, he first poured himself a cup of tea. The habit of drinking tea appeared in him back at 16 when he was sent to serve in the British Army. Placing the cup on the table, he suddenly felt that someone was watching him. He entered a small cafe on the very edge of the airport, full of determination to find out who and why was watching him. On the way, he carefully looked at every passerby, trying to notice familiar faces or suspicious behavior. Only one of them got that far, and the hero immediately recognized him. It was a man from his past in the CIS, and one more thing was clear as day. This pursuer came to kill him. SAS is the elite of the British Army, known as one of the best in the world. Only the strongest and most enduring withstand the harsh selection and come out of there with unique skills and invaluable experience. In the army, he carried out tasks for years that no one was allowed to know about, so he always hid his face to remain invisible and not to compromise any operation. He never found out what his partner was thinking when he posted their joint photo on Instagram. Although the hero's face was covered in the picture, in the window's reflection he was instantly recognized, and it was because of this that he lost his job in the SAS. Time T ran out. Who is he really? So many people want to settle accounts with him. Perhaps this stranger is hunting for some important information known only to our hero, or maybe a reward has already been announced for him. But the most important thing remains a mystery. Why does he himself want to end his life? At first, Garrett does not believe that only one person is following him. Usually they stick together, walk like a shadow, and always act as a team. Maybe one of them is now lurking nearby, closely watching the main character in the crowd or following him through cameras, but the main character does not wait. He decides to act alone. The hero greeted everyone loudly and with a radiant smile said that he had come to Tokyo for the first time. He asked where he could take good photos, and one man kindly suggested several interesting locations, after which the hero thanked him and went on to explore the city further. He went around almost all the places where the partner could be spying on him, but found no one, bought everything he needed on the way, and now only had to check the last hiding place. If he is really alone, he will not dare to look away from the hero. His movements reveal inexperience, so most likely he will immediately rush after him. Garrett lures him into an abandoned area behind the airport. Now that the goal is right in front of him, he will never allow ordinary people to get involved in this matter. The man hid in the restroom and took his position there. The stranger hurried after him, afraid of losing sight of him because he himself knew this feeling well. The man did not relax. He instantly took out a flashlight and shone a blinding beam into the stranger's face, trying to blind him, and at the same time grabbed the first thing that looked like a stick, which turned out to be an ordinary rolled-up magazine. CCQ is a special combat technique designed for actions in tight, enclosed spaces and a true pride of the unit. Thanks to this skill, even an ordinary flashlight in a fighter's hands turns into a dangerous weapon. Moreover, his special flashlight model shines so brightly that it can easily blind an opponent. When there was no weapon at hand, the hero remembered the skills from the SAS special unit. He knows how to improvise and use whatever comes to hand. Instantly orienting himself, he swung the magazine, but the stranger was too agile. He easily dodged and simultaneously threw off his cloak. The hero sharply tore the hood off the pursuer and was stunned. Before him stood a creature with a human body, but a bird's head instead of a face. This creature pushed the hero so hard that he flew straight into the wall of the restroom stall, and the partition could not withstand the powerful blow. It shattered into pieces. The hero froze from this incredible strength. It was hard for him to understand how a man in a raven mask could have such unusual abilities. He did not want to take someone's life, but later he would regret not daring to do it. The hero stepped closer, sharply struck the opponent in the solar plexus. He instantly bent over and fell forward. He fell to the floor with a loud thud. He suddenly started coughing. It was all over. Finally, Garrett dared to take off that ridiculous mask, but it refused to come off. Suddenly, a shadow flashed behind him. Garrett instantly turned around. He decided that it was probably a companion of that strange creature. The man still understood nothing, so he carefully looked around and checked every detail. He did not understand how he ended up here, and the stranger he had just defeated suddenly stood up and quickly uttered some strange spell. Suddenly, a weapon appeared in Assort's hands. He could not comprehend how all this happened, and only one thing was clear: he was in big trouble. Garrett and the strangers stood facing each other, and tension literally hung in the air between them. The man clearly felt that there was almost no room for escape. Now he was completely at the mercy of his pursuers. Suddenly, a bright glowing circle flared up under his feet. The strangers froze in amazement, their hearts pounding from what they saw, and the hero looked around in confusion, trying to understand what had happened. The circle became increasingly bizarre, covered with new mysterious patterns, and it seemed that something extraordinary and troubling was happening here. The hero decided that probably the earth had just trembled. And suddenly, in the next moment, she felt as if she was rapidly falling down. Could everything around be collapsing? He found himself in a strange place, as if in a crack of space, where everything around shone with bright light. As if he was inside something, and wildly rushing through space. Was he really sleeping now? Suddenly he found himself in the water, as if he had simply fallen into the sewer. He took out a flashlight, turned it on, and carefully examined everything around. His attention was drawn to a column near the wall. It was covered with moss and dotted with strange inscriptions, not at all resembling a pipeline or part of the sewer. It seemed like ordinary ruins, but what do their walls really hide? One of the paths suddenly turned out to be blocked by a pile of stones. He could not understand why there were neither traps nor a pit to fall into here. At that moment, he suddenly noticed his poncho. Probably this thing had fallen out of his backpack. Maybe some of his belongings were still nearby. Suddenly, he noticed a man and thought that he was probably wounded. In the middle of the debris, in the water, a girl lay motionless. Suddenly, she was seized by a cough. Garrett approached the girl, asked how she felt, and immediately began to examine her wounds, first checking her head, because with brain injuries, people often lose their usual mobility. Fortunately, everything was fine. No serious damage was found, only a small bump. The girl's pupils reacted to the light, which meant the brain was not damaged, maybe just a mild concussion. He carefully lifted her under the armpits and took her outside, trying not to worsen any possible fractures, because she needed to be taken outdoors as soon as possible so she wouldn't freeze. The girl's face turned pale, her lips turned blue. Everything was really bad. She urgently needed to be warmed up. Suddenly, he noticed what she was wearing. It seemed to him that her clothing was very unusual. The material did not at all resemble fabrics usually sold in stores. Everything around looked strange and confused, as if these were fragments of what once stood here, but perhaps these ruins appeared after an earthquake when everything fell right here. But around no electric wires, nor any plastic things, he simply did not see them. Suddenly, the girl woke up sharply. She noticed with surprise that her clothing was unbuttoned. The man immediately felt that she was confused, and hastily explained that he met her already with her clothes loosened. The girl whispered something in response, but the young man did not catch her words. The man stands confused and does not understand what is happening, and the girl does not even try to protect herself. You need to sincerely try to understand her. Every time he greeted her in a different language, trying again and again to surprise her with something unusual. The girl spoke again. The word earth trembled in her voice. She asked if he was really a god and if he came from earth, and the man asked what exactly she meant. Her eyes shone with joyful light. She spoke incessantly, occasionally mentioning that the hero was from earth and calling him Marabito, but her words got tangled, and the boy never understood why she was so happy, until suddenly the girl asked to wait a moment and pulled a feather out from somewhere. She lightly touches his nose, causing tickling, and then in a serious tone asks him to remain still. He sneezed and suddenly a bird burst out of his nose. He grabbed a feather and instantly disappeared into the sky. The girl was covered in mucus dripping from the man's nose. Garrett asked in surprise what she had done and who this unusual bird was, and the girl explained that it was the Babylonian bird. At first the man was confused when he heard about the Babylonian bird, but over time he realized that they could still understand each other. The girl supported him, explaining that these birds build their nests in the heads of people from Earth, and because of this, people are no longer able to understand one another. She never guessed that the very feather left as an inheritance by her great-great-great-grandmother would ever really be needed, and the man still angrily insisted that the bird, bursting out of the nose, had tangled his hair. He did not remember the last time he was so confused. Garrett turned to the girl and, listening intently, asked if she heard that strange noise. Suddenly, a strange, horned creature with a saber in its hands appeared before them and immediately lunged at them. The man deftly jumped aside and stepped on the hand of the enemy holding the weapon, and the creature looked like a deer, but how did it manage to jump so high? A fight suddenly broke out between them. The girl screamed loudly. A demon stands before them, a creature from a race that feeds on humans. Warriors with horns on their heads soared to incredible heights. She warns the hero to be more careful, but at that moment the demon lunges forward, swings the sword, and almost injures him. Without hesitation, the hero rushed forward and firmly grabbed the deer by the horns. Then he suddenly pushed off the ground sharply and swiftly rose into the air. He confidently grabbed the creature and sharply twisted its neck. The body fell to the ground with a dull thud. Garrett noticed the demon's powerful muscles. Although its face resembled a deer's head, it was a real monster. Suddenly, the girl screamed, trying to warn about a threat sneaking up from behind. Suddenly, a new warrior appeared on the battlefield, a deer's head on his shoulders, and in his hands was a sharp spear. He gathered all his determination and rushed forward, grabbed the monster's spears, and skillfully turned them against the enemy, launching an attack. He noticed that she had lightning-fast reflexes. It seemed this girl was well-versed in combat skills, and that could cause him problems. Although he wanted to give her a chance to escape, the way back was already closed. Her weapon remained somewhere in the water. What to do now? His heart tightened. Could she somehow influence what was happening? If her assumptions were correct, and she was really where she suspected, nearby should lie a hidden sword that a traveler had given her many years ago. The deer lunged at the hero again, holding the spear in its hooves, and attacked with even greater zeal. The man clearly saw how the creature struck and instantly disappeared. The girl called the alien to her, but he cautiously advised her to hide. It was too risky here. The girl accepted his advice, but before that suggested using this moment to her advantage. The boy tightly gripped a flintlock rifle in his hands. He desperately wanted to find out where it had come from, but now the most important thing was simply to have at least some weapon. A flint pistol is truly a useful thing. By loading it in advance, you can instantly use it at any moment, and although he had never held such a rare weapon before, this thing felt strangely familiar to him. The hero pulled the trigger, and the bullet cut through the air, hitting the enemy's head directly. The creature rose into the air and swiftly flew away, and the girl exclaimed in delight, "This is simply incredible." She was told that among the aliens there are people with unusual abilities. Her name was Mizuo. She again could not fall asleep until late at night, and next to her was a man named Taiga. The girl cautiously asked about his middle name, and Tigo, surprised, replied that such a thing does not exist on Earth. He began to anxiously inquire where he had ended up, because he understood this was no longer Earth, and Mizuo simply confirmed his suspicions. The inhabitants of this world call it the country of a million labyrinths. The world here is tangled like a labyrinth. At every step lie treacherous traps, dangerous monsters, and ancient merciless magic. The man was so disappointed with the service on the plane that he seemed to have hidden from this reality in his own nightmares. One would like to think that this was indeed the case. Taiga, sighing tensely, asks Ta if she knows any safe place where they could go. Ta replies that such a place exists, but she cannot remember where it is, and adds that the threshold of her home is just above them, on the upper floor. She found a few more bullets and handed them to the man, offering to take them. The man asked what had happened to her house, and the girl explained that it was all because of the dungeon storm. After that, the hero became interested and began to ask in detail what exactly that storm was. The hero had not even uttered a word when suddenly the same storm rose in the dungeon. Suddenly Praxi appeared on the ceiling, and Taiga immediately realized that everything could collapse, so he rushed to the girl to save her. He wrapped himself in clothes so tightly that he seemed completely covered, even more than the situation required, and Mizuo blushed embarrassedly upon seeing this unexpected behavior. Suddenly the ceiling crashed down with a rumble. The man asked if the girl was feeling well, and she sincerely thanked him for saving her and apologized for that harshness during their acquaintance. Tiger advised the girl to leave while the monster was still watching them through the camera. At that moment, everything around began to shake again, but Mizuho asked him to wait another minute. She took glasses out of her bag and said that she couldn't manage here without them because she had poor eyesight. As soon as the girl put them on, she finally got a good look at Taiga, but what she saw disappointed her. She noticed that he did not look at all like the one she had been told about. The man smiled, said he was already old, and invited her to go on a journey. Taiga sighed and said that her home was destroyed, and now she had nowhere to live. She only shrugged slightly, as if it was a usual thing, but admitted that today everything was shaking unusually strongly, and the man asked with interest how a storm in the dungeon differed from a real earthquake. Mizuho explained that on Earth such storms are called earthquakes. Although she had driven away the Babel bird, her story still contained strange and incomprehensible words, which intrigued him very much, so he took a steel pen and began carefully writing the words on a slate board. Her hands trembled slightly, and the man only now noticed this, although he should have noticed earlier. He took off his coat and quietly threw it over her shoulders. He explained, a person loses most heat through the head and neck, so it is best to protect them. She thanked him and sincerely admitted that she had lost feeling in her legs and could no longer walk. The main character froze. Her words stunned him. Even a drop in body temperature by just 2 degrees can cause hypothermia, and Mizuho already showed such signs. Cold pierced her to the bone, and she could only hold on thanks to a strong adrenaline rush. The man carried the girl on his back, and she, a little embarrassed, apologized for constantly asking him for help. He gently reassured her don't worry about such trifles, and Taiga suggested postponing this for now and instead telling where she came from. She lives near the fifth support, that is where the power of the Roman Empire is concentrated. Once there was a great state here, which everyone called the United States of Rome, and I even suspect that it was this state that gave the empire this name. Earlier she traveled with daredevils and trade caravans, and it was during those journeys that she first took a rifle in her hands. Taiga asked the girl what she did, and she smiled. She became a storyteller, passing on to people ancient stories and songs that have been preserved in this land from generation to generation. Taiga immediately noticed how her voice became more cheerful and blossomed. It was clear she really liked it, so he asked her to tell interesting stories about local landmarks. She said that she was not sure if there was something beyond that wall, did not know how to get there or how many days it might take. In this world, people can be separated from their loved ones forever by walls, and after these words, the hero begins to think that all the millions of labyrinths might be parts of one great mechanism. The hero suddenly understood what the wind was trying to tell him. Mizuo imagined that the exit was already very close. They stepped into a huge hall, and what they saw involuntarily made their mouths drop in amazement. Around them were only ruins. The girl could not comprehend how all this had happened. The tiger asked if everything was supposed to be exactly like this. She confidently replied no, because she had never in her life seen such endless open spaces. It seemed the dungeon had simply disappeared, as if erased from the face of the earth. The girl fixed her gaze on the statue that stood majestically right in the middle of the main square. There proudly towered the figure of the king. Simply put, half of the territory was already destroyed. Mizuo barely restrained her anxiety for the boys and sincerely hoped that they were all right. Taiga understood that now they needed to climb higher. Would they still have enough strength? He did not know for sure if she could get help there, but there was no other choice. Carefully laying the girl on the ground, the hero asked if she had enough strength to walk on her own, then suggested checking together what had happened to the others. They made their way along a narrow path left by the builders. The girl whispered that it was very high here, and it scared her a little. Taiga calmly replied that there was no need to worry, the main thing was to go slowly. Whenever they had to overcome difficulties, the man always stood beside and supported the girl. Every time their hands touched, the girl blushed shyly. Mizuo said that Taiga always behaved confidently and bravely and did not hesitate even for a second to come to the aid of strangers. Taiga admitted that everything around him was strange and unfamiliar. If it were not for her, he probably would have been gone long ago. Now they were even. Mizuo smiled and assured him that if anything was unclear, he could always turn to her with a question. The hero thought that Mizuo was really very kind. She could have been so scared that she wouldn't have been able to move, but that didn't happen, and suddenly, the main hero noticed something. They found themselves in another place. Right in the middle of the room stretched a forest bathed in bright light, and the girl immediately saw terrible destruction around. Looks like a real star. Mizuo whispers that once stars really shone above them, but now the whole sky is hidden behind labyrinths. Those labyrinths locked the world, the stars, and even themselves, and the hero approaches closer, ready to share his story about the star. Simply put, in this million labyrinths, there is nothing outside. Everything that exists is only inside the rooms. If that collapse hadn't happened, this place would still be hidden from everyone, and behind the wall would remain a mysterious, unexplored territory. Several rooms merged into a lace of passages, and he could not at all understand where those passages led, and how everything was arranged here. No wonder this place was called a labyrinth. And finally, they approached the statue. They were already about to go up, when suddenly, everything around began to collapse again. The man stood in front of the girl like a living shield to protect her from danger. Suddenly, the road collapsed. Someone shouted to them, "Quickly climb up the stairs." Mizuo instantly recognized that familiar voice. It was Padasarasana. The man also recognized the girl and asked how she was feeling. Padasara told the friends that Mizuo had returned. The girl sincerely apologized to the boys for making them worry, after which she quickly rushed after the rope, and Tiger noticed that Mizuo really tried hard. He was also helped to get back on his feet. He blushed and admitted that he felt a little embarrassed because these very people had saved him, but Padasarasana reminded him that in fact, Mizuo had saved them all. His name was Free Snacks Padasada. Once he owned a hotel that no longer exists. The man greeted them, introduced himself, and sincerely explained he had no surname because he was born in distant lands. Suddenly, the boy noticed the people around and froze in amazement. They all had tails and ears like animals. He even rubbed his eyes. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. Padasara asked what happened, and the boy shyly replied that maybe due to recent stress, it seemed so to him, and animals began flickering before his eyes. Mizuo was asked how His Royal Majesty and the important people of the country were feeling. This question immediately caused anxiety. everyone became more serious and silent, and only Patasara dared to break the silence and spoke. He replied that the royal court was destroyed, and His Majesty, along with the creators of this land, disappeared in a terrible storm. Everyone looked at the statue of the ruler, some sadly bowed their heads, others quietly wiped away tears. The fifth pillar that held the power of the Roman Empire collapsed, and the girl froze in place, confused and not knowing what to do next. Fear and despair overwhelmed the people. The fields and livestock were gone. Hunger seemed inevitable. Everyone was afraid that if monsters appeared, they would not be able to save themselves. The monsters would simply eat them, and that would be the end. The Padasura calmed everyone, asking them not to give up and not to lose hope. She believed, if they stuck together and helped each other, they could survive these trials. The hero was firmly convinced those who created this land were people of great importance. Mizuo tells how they faced the darkness of the dungeons and bravely fought the monsters. These people are creating a new kingdom, and it is precisely because of this that they become rays of hope for everyone. Not everyone managed to overcome this trial. Many lost their dearest people. The inhabitants began to quarrel among themselves, and suddenly the ground beneath them began to tremble. Fear gripped the people when the thunderstorm struck again. Taiga shouted loudly for everyone to stay in place and not take a step until the earthquake stopped. He ordered everyone to crouch and cover their heads with their hands. Everything around began to collapse. The hero noticed that the plane began to tilt, warned the girl to hold on tighter, and wondered if everything would return to a horizontal position, but it turned out it would not. Suddenly the entire cliff trembled, but the platform no longer swayed. Right before his eyes, the ground suddenly began to move, cutting through the labyrinth. The hero wonders, can such a world really exist? Looking around, he sees only chaos and troubles. When Tiger met this creepy monster, he immediately guessed he found himself in a completely unfamiliar world. He said, "I can't take it anymore," and decided to give up. He understands, this is real life. This is exactly how everything looks among millions of tangled labyrinths. Suddenly, countless monsters appear before his eyes. They attack people. Misha still doesn't understand how he managed to end up here, and at that very moment, he notices two familiar figures in the crowd. Before him stood two strangers whom he had already met in his world, and he felt, no matter what, they too are part of this world. They brought him here along with themselves, but why? What do they want from him? He shouted, trying to understand what they needed. But no sound came in response. Suddenly, the ground beneath his feet cracked and began to slide down. The hero stands confused. He does not know who he really is. Suddenly, the avalanche stopped, and people looked at each other in confusion, not understanding what had happened. Could it be they now had a chance for rescue? Tiger advised first to find those who were nearby and make sure they were okay. The man approached the very edge of the building and suddenly realized there was no way out. He called Podessa closer to him, and the people around believed him even more than the hero himself. The old man calmly asked what had happened. The hero sharply suggested immediately evacuating all the people. The old man quietly muttered something to himself. Taiga asked why the presence of the stranger worried the old man so much and why he said it was not the hero's business. The old man replied that everything was fine and reminded that this very hero had saved them all. The man could not understand how such a thing could have happened at all. Padasura sincerely admitted that he liked the main hero, promised to invite him for a drink sometime, and addressed him as Taigasan, emphasizing that he did not know the second name, to which the hero replied with a smile. Alcohol is good, but tea is much more precious to him. Tiger finally understands. These two clearly know something important, and perhaps they even know how to return to the past world. Everyone ended up together in one place. Everyone remained alive and intact. Tiga felt that the room became piercingly cold, so he decided to light a fire. The old man looked at those around and asked if someone could give Mizuo a sweater. The hero noticed how cold Mizuo was and realized that it was a bad sign. Tiger returned to Padasar and asked him to light the fire, while he himself was going to return to the square to look for something to ignite, and anxiously asked if it was too risky because the square might collapse at any moment. The hero looks at the statue and says that they have no other choice besides, someone else might overtake them. The man slowly walked from one room to another, picking up and packing everything he would need. It seemed to him that it was very cramped here. How could this even be a home? The toilet was just a bucket in the middle of the room, and the kitchen was shared by everyone together. Suddenly the boy heard someone's voice asking, "Is anyone here?" and immediately guessed that it was coming from behind that very door. The girl behind the door whispered that she was very scared and trembling. She asked in fear what had happened. Seeing the boy, the girl warned him about the danger and asked to be let out. Tiger explained that this place is not a prison. When asked why she was here, the girl frankly admitted that she once committed a petty theft. The girl asked the boy who he was because she did not recognize him at all. He had a stern look and looked as if risk was a usual thing for him, and playing with other people's fates was a daily routine. The tiger decided that she was attentive and not scary, so he stayed nearby. He asked where the keys were, and she answered that the keys hang on the wall to his right. Unfortunately, there was no wall on the right hand at that moment. The hero noticed a creature that resembled a human. Stucky had pointed ears and nose, and the girl suddenly shouted demon. She thought it might be a scout, which meant others were hiding nearby, and the man remembered that demons feed on humans. He must not be given a chance to inform his relatives. He must be eliminated. The hero fired's bullet hit the target directly. The demon fell. He felt the enemy was somewhere nearby, hiding very close, and that was bad. Reloading the weapon took a full 30 seconds, so chasing him now was pointless, and the girl asked if he wanted to try to catch up with him. He replied that he could not do it. The key was simply unreachable. Suddenly the building tilted, and everything around began to collapse. The girl guessed that the key had probably fallen somewhere. The hero knelt on one knee, carefully pulled the pin from the sneaker, and said he would now unlock the lock. The girl asked if he could open the lock, and the boy smiled, saying that he had learned this at work. The stranger instantly felt that he was not as ordinary as he seemed at first. The girl hinted that he might be a robber, but he immediately asked her not to put him in the same category as criminals. The hero instantly unlocked the lock, and they hurriedly got out of there. On the way, the girl began to guess who that man really could be. The man threw her a sack and offered to help carry the load. She gladly agreed to participate, but immediately put forward her condition: she wants a fair share of the loot. The hero did not argue and agreed right away. The girl was happy and instant understanding arose between them, but suddenly everything changed. The building unexpectedly collapsed. They were saved, but a fierce storm broke outside. Darkness covered everything, and no one noticed how a deep chasm formed, so the tiger warned the girl to be careful. The edges could be too fragile. She noticed that she reacted completely differently than usual, also Manhwa in a special way. Then the girl asked the boy to tell a little about himself. In response, the boy gave his name and asked what hers was. Her name was Trouble Trotty, just a miserable thief, but Taiga couldn't get this little demon out of his head. He was curious whether she would come alone or bring someone else, and Trouble only replied that her companions also needed to eat something, because humans are food for demons. When demons gather together, everything gets complicated. Among them are both cunning ones and huge brutes, so they attack in groups like a real army, but if you run away immediately, they might not even notice you disappeared. The man with a trembling voice explained that people from her country are hiding here from danger, and now they are trapped and cannot get out of this place. The hero suggested she join them, but she immediately refused. Decisive, reminding that it was they who put her behind bars, so it was not up for discussion. Her only desire was to get back what Taiga had promised her personally. She unzipped the bag and saw pieces of wood, a glass, some kind of lid, and some other junk inside. Tridi at first glance called it all trash, and at that moment someone called the hero. It was Padasara. He looked at Take and asked if he was okay. Suddenly, a terrible roar sounded. Take assured that he was fine, although the platform suddenly collapsed. The man asked if there was anyone else nearby. The hero replied that he was gathering branches for the fire anyway. Then he asked how the fire was doing. Grandfather became agitated. He realized that he had underestimated this man, and usually in such cases people turn to a sorcerer to light the fire. They were used to an easy, calm life, where everything had long been arranged for convenience. In this world, undoubtedly, its own unique system operated. The hero clearly laid out his plan and called Trotty for help. Meanwhile, the girl was hiding behind the rubble of the destroyed wall. People could not believe their eyes. She was alive, and it turned out that he had let her go. Taiga explained that she was the one who brought her here together with him, and asked why he still had not handed the girl over to her. First, people discussed the situation with dissatisfaction, but someone expressed the opinion that in their circumstances this was really the best solution after all. He would not do anything bad. On the contrary, he would have to take care of her. The man looked at Trotty and quietly asked if he could trust her. She agreed because she had no other choice. She suggested lighting a bonfire using a flint, and the heroes replied that first they needed to find a suitable place. They descended into an ancient temple people used to gather here. The man noted that the area was lower, so the wind rarely reached here, and the stones heated during the day would give off warmth for a long time, so it was much cozier here. All the excess that the participants brought was used as fuel. They only quickly divided the leftovers among themselves. While this was happening, the hero prepared the place for the bonfire. He pulled out a tuft of hair, lit it with a special flint, and everything instantly flared up. The tiger says that the flame does not ignite immediately. It gradually flares up from the heat, so he advises not to take too large or hard-to-ignite things for kindling. Yudasara suddenly realized why this fabric catches fire so easily. The hero said that he needed more fuel and asked to find out who could have the necessary items. When stacking firewood, leave gaps between the logs so that air can pass, but when firewood is scarce, limit the air a little so that they burn longer. Trotty always brought everything he was offered. Everyone gave what they could. Adasara came alive, telling that he recently came across a big fat boar and suggested making lard from it. He explained that such lard has long been used for lubricating musical instruments, and like Razin, added that if you rub wood with lard, it will burn better, and he also recalled that the girls in the village have wigs. The hero lit a fire, saw with relief that everything was ready, and said that now it was time to take care of Mizuho, but suddenly he was called and anxiously informed. Something was wrong with Mizuho. She suddenly developed strange symptoms. She was so exhausted that she no longer responded to voice or touch. The boy panicked and tried to bring her to consciousness, but her skin was icy like ice. This was the final stage of hypothermia. Freddy became interested in the girl sitting by the fire. The hero asked her to spread a blanket from their luggage next to the fire, and the girl, introducing herself as Taiga, addressed Treddy and asked if she was the same thief who once broke into Mizuho's house. The girl asked all the men to move to the other side, and Taiga was also about to leave, but first addressed Trotty with a request. He asked her to undress Mizuho and lie next to her under the blanket to warm Mizuho with her own heat, and Trotty assured Taiga that she could count on her. She began to undress, but the hero immediately stopped her and asked her not to do so in such cold. This could be deadly for her. She undressed, carefully placed one piece of clothing between herself and Trotty, and covered herself with the other. Trotty said she could already go to sleep. He replied that if she really wanted to rest, it was better to do it now. But the girl was already sleeping sweetly. Tigan noticed that at such moments, they reminded her of little children. The woman said with relief that Trotty was not as terrible as she had initially thought. The main hero heard that she was called a thief, although Mizuho was not a victim at all. She explained that Trotty had been caught even before she managed to steal anything. Now the guys could be informed that they could return. The man asked the girl to distribute blankets to others who needed them, and she gladly agreed, even offering him some rest, but the man still had one more task to complete. Taiga loudly called all the free people to gather, said there were several important tasks to be done, and the first was to take care of the water supply. He advised them to go to the nearby river and collect water there, but strictly emphasized, before drinking, the water must be boiled, because if drunk raw, it could cause poisoning. It was time to stand guard. Monsters lived in the dungeon, so he asked people to take turns guarding the exits outside. One of the men, his voice trembling, asked, "What will happen if we are attacked? We only have knives for self-defense." The hero said decisively, "If something goes wrong, immediately extinguish the fire and hide," so they agreed in advance where to run to avoid wasting time. The man went himself to inspect the place for the guard, leaving Podasar as the watcher. Podasar smiled and said he had cooked soup from lard, offering the hero to taste it first. The hero thanked him, but quietly said that first they needed to feed the sick and children. Strick nodded in agreement with the others. Then the man stepped aside and addressed Siak, asking him to take care of Mizuho. Suddenly Mizuho opened her eyes and had no idea where she was. When Sia woke up, Trotty was sleeping soundly next to her, snuggled up to her. Sia thought she would definitely thank her friend after all. She had protected her with her warmth all this time. She became interested in how long she had slept and was told that quite a lot of time had passed. Mizuho hesitantly got up, paying no attention to the fact that she was without clothes. Saekin calmly said that the clothes were wet but would dry soon. Mizuho, embarrassed, blushed and asked what had happened to her. She thought that Treddy was trying to rob her again, so she sharply hit the girl. Saekin tried to explain that it was a misunderstanding, and this time it was completely different, but the woman rudely ordered her to be silent and threw a steel feather at Saya. The man said that they had gone around the nearby places, but could only pass this road. Taiga said that everyone was counting on him. Ristobai said that he once worked as a guard. He described this job in detail to the hero so that he could rest a little. Tiger feels that now he has done everything that depended on him. Now he can only hope that nothing bad will happen. Mizuho noticed the hero and looked at him with surprise. He asked if she could already get up. The girl nodded and handed him his cup. The hero inhaled the pleasant aroma of the drink coming from it. The girl explained that it was tea, a gift as a token of gratitude from everyone. The old man sighed once again and reminded the hero that he really wanted to drink tea. Sia noticed how the peasants hurriedly grabbed everything that came to hand, but she went around, carefully searched, and still found some tea for the old man. The smell of this drink reminded of nuts. Its taste turned out to be unusual and not at all like black tea, but it was amazingly delicious. The soup was already ready. Meanwhile, Tiger silently cleaned his rifle, and Mizuho sat nearby. He told her that after the first shot, there was no time left at all. Mizuho asked if something really had happened. The hero froze for a moment, choosing words for Mizuho, and realized that he wanted to talk to her alone, so he quietly asked her to move to a quieter place, away from everyone. The girl sincerely froze with surprise when she heard about the demon scout. Suddenly, everything fell into place. That's why the enemies find people so easily. The hero calmly shrugged because he hadn't noticed such a demon, and it could be true. He had only a few bullets and some gunpowder left, enough for only 4 shots, and he felt, if the demons attacked together, it would be impossible to defend. Everyone in the city is having a hard time now, so he didn't want to drag his problems onto others. The girl asked, if so, then what's the point of bringing up this topic at all? Over time, she realized, they no longer had either a guide or a king who could protect from fear and chaos. Left alone with a terrifying labyrinth from which there is no escape, the inhabitants would inevitably start quarreling and dividing. But they still needed those who would lead others through the labyrinth, brave people who know how to discover new places. And at that moment, Trotty appeared and reminded that their soup was already almost cold. Suddenly the girl screamed, finding herself in a large room. Mizuo asked in surprise why she was so scared, and the girl explained that in the darkness she hadn't even realized how spacious this room was. The hero remembered that people here had lived in cramped, enclosed spaces since childhood, so a large open area was a real test for them, frightening to the bone. In fact, if you think about it, Mizuo was a true braveheart. At that very moment, an interesting thought struck her. She tried to pull Treddy into the light, but she resisted fiercely. She said she was already feeling better, and the hero sincerely rejoiced at this. Mizuo offered some soup to cheer up. Treddy asked anxiously if she had been too rude. The girl replied confusedly, "What are you talking about? You were the one who was going to attack me." Not far away on the roadside, children sat and cried bitterly, longing for their mothers and fathers, and the hero understood. These people now need warriors who can conquer a new home for them. Adasara, who met him with a smile, had also experienced loss. The war took his wife and son, yet each of these people, despite pain and loss, warmly welcomed the hero. He had already seen people with similar stories in the Middle East and Africa, and could not leave those who live in constant fear. But here everything was different. This was a completely different world. How could he help them now? The girl approached Rustibison, thanked him for faithful service on guard, and treated him to warm soup. Then suddenly the ground trembled beneath their feet. Someone was approaching quickly, and Rustibison immediately ordered the girl to hurry and inform Mr. Tezu because he had to take care of the residents' safety. The girl called Tezu and warned anxiously that something was moving toward them. Suddenly, a huge demon burst out from behind the columns. With one powerful blow, he crushed Rustobai. People panicked and fled. The hero quickly grabbed his pistol. He already knew the demon had come to hunt these people. He shouted for everyone to immediately go to shelter. Trotty was to relay this news to the other guards. Mizuo was entrusted with watching the children, and Padasara together with Saekin were responsible for ensuring everyone safely reached the shelter. Everyone managed to find shelter, but this only delayed the danger for a moment. At the crossroads, the heroes had two choices: either abandon those who could not save themselves and try to escape alone, or gather their strength, confront the giant, and save everyone. But no one knew if ordinary swords and arrows could stop such a monster. The hero aimed the pistol directly at him and pulled the trigger. The bullet hit the head exactly, and he did not even have time to understand anything. The bullet only slightly grazed the target. The fight was not over. Trotty rushed to help the hero, but he needed a few seconds to reload the weapon. Suddenly he noticed a scout he had not seen before. It was this scout who had brought the main enemy here. What should they do next? It seems the pistol will no longer solve their problems, and the hero no longer wants anyone to suffer, so he turns to the girl for advice. She feels that the boy has come up with a plan. Curiosity takes over, and she is ready to help, extending her hand for cooperation. She addressed the demon and commanded him, "Follow me immediately." He tried to grab the girl, but in vain. She swiftly stepped aside, skillfully dodging his hands. He assured that it was simple. They just needed to lure the monster to the very edge of the cliff. Meanwhile, the girl quickly dodged the monster's attacks. She laughed and loudly challenged the monster, "Try to catch me." Taiga is convinced that she deserves praise. She did an excellent job distracting attention, and their entire plan depends on attacking precisely when the demon is completely unprepared. Here, everything depends on the first shot. You need to hit the weak spot, so you will take more gunpowder and load the shotgun with 2 bullets at once. In the era of Shingoku, there was a special way to load a flintlock shotgun. Thanks to it, it fired almost like a shotgun. However, it put tremendous strain on the weapon itself, but the shot was incredibly powerful and destructive. The abyss was very close now. Trotty no longer saw any escape route. She looked back and met the boy's gaze. The giant suddenly reached for her, trying to grab her, and sharply lunged forward. At that moment, the girl realized this was her only chance to save herself. That's how it happened. The man finally dared to act, and there was no turning back. Iran was resolutely moving toward his goal. It is this very goal that fills the entire great body with energy. It was Alalotent in herself. Suddenly, a tiger lunged at her. Two lead bullets pierced the skin, passed through the muscles and the Achilles tendon, which was already too stretched after the sudden movement, and tore it to pieces. Trotty exclaimed with admiration. The hero managed to complete the task. Now it remained only to watch as the monster finally disappeared into the dark abyss. But the creature, not letting go, firmly clung to the column. Suddenly he grabbed Trotty, and the main hero loudly shouted her name. The demon pushed the hero with such force that at that moment, the boy realized the trophy was already in the enemy's hands. What to do next? The girl desperately shouts to him to run because the monster will not let them go. She begged him to escape with everyone while the monster was busy with her and trying to swallow her. Taiga clenched the dagger in his hand and looking at the cold blade wondered, could it pierce his body? Would it hit the most vulnerable spot? He had no answers to these questions. But the hero has no other choice. He gathered his last strength and boldly plunged his weapon straight into the monster's snout. The man plunged the dagger as deep as he could muster. He never abandons friends in trouble, and right now the hero strikes the enemy with all his might. From the wound on the monster's neck, blood gushed out and its fingers weakened. Finally, Trotty managed to break free from its hands. He rushed to destroy everything around. Trotty, standing next to the boy, watched in surprise how this monster, despite such a great loss of blood, could still move. But the hero disagrees. He decisively rejects this thought. He says that with such an injured leg, he can no longer hold on, and indeed, the demon began to fall from the edge of the cliff. Trotty blossomed with joy finally. He managed to fall, and victory was on their side. She suddenly realized that Taiga was not as simple as he seemed at first. People came out of their shelters and began calling Taiga and Trotty by name. Everyone could not understand how these two managed to defeat such a huge giant. Adasara sadly says that she really feels sorry for Rustobai. She is sure, without him and one more person, they would have long since become victims. Mizuo picks her up and adds that only thanks to Taiga did everyone remain alive. Only his cleverness and courage saved them, and it is Taiga who can show how not to lose the way. Like thunder out of a clear sky, the girls suddenly proposed that Taiga become their king. One by one, people approached him and begged for help. They believed with all their hearts that only he could save them. He seriously asked them not to joke. Mizuho, although admitting that perhaps they were too persistent in their requests, still turned to him again and begged for help, this time as a king, as a conqueror. Trady agreed that Taiga deserves to become king because he always knew how to properly divide matters among everyone. The hero confessed that he was once a soldier and therefore could not become king. All this would inevitably lead to trouble. Trotty replied that nothing worse than now could happen, and seeing his stern look, asked him not to look at her so frighteningly. Taiga sees that everyone takes this very seriously, but still believes that asking a stranger to become king is too bold. Shradai said decisively, when Taiga becomes king, she herself will become the mistress of this land. Mizuho supported her, although she is not the strongest in battles. She understands the labyrinth better than anyone. Both promised that they would always stand on his side. The man recalls Mizuho's words, conquerors of lands are rays of hope. They are capable of sacrificing themselves for others. These two are ready for anything, and if he really has the power to help someone, then why not do it? The hero obediently nodded, agreeing with the decision made. He took on the role of the king's representative and will bear these duties until someone more worthy for this position appears. Turns out that he is now one of the governors. As the king's representative, he has to come up with a name for the new state. His mind is blank, no interesting ideas come to him, so he recalls something familiar and dear to his heart, and finally suggests naming the state Camp Bravo. The hero noticed caution in his interlocutor's gaze and felt that he was about to be asked where Alpha Group is now. Mizuho asked what others think about this. They agreed that the idea is not bad. And if the word great is added at the beginning, the name will become even more solemn. At that moment, Mizuho proclaimed the creation of the great kingdom of Camp Bravo. She solemnly greeted the king's envoy Taiga. The former soldier became the ruler in a world unfamiliar to her. He does not like this at all. He is not interested in power at all, but he is also unable to leave the estate. Indeed, he has a difficult character. For the first time, they gathered around the round table in the huge kingdom of Camp Bravo, and immediately two serious problems emerged. There is almost no firewood left, so little that it might only last through the night. There is also almost no food, and feeding all 29 people is becoming increasingly difficult. No help is expected from anywhere, so they will have to fight for survival on their own, otherwise they will perish. Mizuho supported Taiga and explained, that is exactly why they will have to go to labyrinths. The girl suddenly realized, Taiga is Marabito, and he stood confused and had no idea what it was about. Trotty explains, if you want to take resources from the endless labyrinths, you will have to go through a bunch of different rooms. One hides a dense forest, another is flooded with water, there is a room full of ores, somewhere else you will find a place with soil and twinkling stars. In a separate corner, there is even a plot for field cultivation, and fish swim in the water rooms. The hero noticed that each room hides its own unique resources. He felt like a novice in this place and understood that there was still so much unknown waiting for him here. He announced to everyone that he was part of Marabito, but no one was surprised people remained indifferent. Then Tradi reminded them that it is here, in this square, that they find protection and peace. Before them stood the majestic royal palace. It is here that their new home and residence will now be. Although there is not even a throne in this room, Mizuo declared with unwavering confidence that it is here that their future kingdom is born. Tradi suggested returning to the original plan. The palace is surrounded on three sides by cliffs, walls, and a river. According to him, the only entrance to the labyrinth is from the northern side. It was through this passage that a huge demon burst in. Only by crossing this entrance can they begin their journey through the labyrinth. Now the hero finally understood. The conquerors of the lands are actually paving the way in the labyrinth, and everything finally came together. The moment has come to choose those who are boldly ready to venture into the depths of the mysterious labyrinth. Taiga says that giant demons and strange creatures with deer heads live in those parts, and therefore he does not want to drag his friends into such a dangerous place. Tradi only sighs and agrees he understands why Taiga is worried, but the cargo will not carry itself. People are needed for this, and although it is really risky, there is simply no other way. The hero offered to go first to protect everyone in the group, but the girls immediately objected because he knew nothing about this labyrinth. They decided that the leader should be someone who has already been here and is well-oriented in these tangled corridors, and the hero mentally agreed. He understood that in such situations, it is better to trust the experience of the locals, but a slight nervousness still did not leave him. Minister Mizuo will decide who exactly to send to gather resources. Meanwhile, Tradi, as Taiga's trusted one, will gather everything necessary for this trip. While everyone was tensely trying to figure out who the real hero was, he suddenly, for some unclear reason, began calling him Ninja, because in this world it is really hard to understand anything. He told the girls that when they finished their business, he still needed to settle something before their departure, and Mizuo curiously asked what exactly he meant. The hero commanded everyone to lie down on the floor, warned that if done incorrectly, one could easily get injured, so he advised first to carefully understand the movements, and only then to fall sharply and quickly take the required pose. Tradi indignantly called him a devil coach, and Mizuo sighed tiredly and admitted that she could no longer endure such a load. She's still not coping very well with this. Taiga said that their path leads to a labyrinth. It would be a pity if he got into trouble unnecessarily. Tradi promised to cover Mizuo from behind. Hearing this, Mizuo only became even more agitated. The hero nostalgically recalled how he taught young soldiers in the army. He terribly wanted to return to Earth, but constant events did not even allow him to ask about it. The hero thought that Mizuo probably knew something about the return and called her for a conversation. Taiga asked if there were any more Marabito besides himself, but this did not surprise anyone. He really turned out to be alone. The girl nodded and added that probably this was because Taiga knew absolutely nothing about the labyrinth. She thinks that probably no one has actually had to see Marabito, but both of them feel as if he is very close. Since childhood, they have listened to countless stories about Enmirs. The local storyteller always came here and told them to the children. Since ancient times, people have whispered various stories, one about someone who got rich, another about love with a queen, but most of the scary legends are dedicated to those who died in the labyrinth. Suddenly the girl laughed and admitted that it was just a joke, so he should not worry, they would stay close to him. The boy asked if there were legends about returning to the former world, and the girl quietly replied that such a story really exists, but she did not tell the details. Suddenly Mizuo remembered. There was little time left, and she rushed to wake Tradi. The hero only said that it was like some strong exile. The girl said that such cases almost never happen. There is only one story, when he finds his way in the endless labyrinths and then lives happily. Mizuo took his side and was not going to deceive, as if there was no longer room for a happy ending in their stories, and now only the two of them remained, perhaps those who know more than others. They needed to focus on their goal, because no one could predict what would happen next. They only have a dagger, a knife, an axe for wood, and a single bullet. Will this be enough to return everyone home alive and unharmed? The hero asked if everything was already prepared, and Tradi confidently replied, "Don't worry, the giant demon will no longer appear. The air still carries the scent of the demon's blood, which Tago destroyed, so other creatures are unlikely to risk appearing out of fear." Suddenly Tradi noticed some inscription carved on a wooden post, and Mizuo immediately became interested. She approached closer to examine it better. The map is already a bit worn, so it's hard to see everything. It really shows something resembling a temple, but no elevator is marked. Perhaps this column is the very elevator, just hidden. The tiger said that it doesn't really matter. Trotty noted that Mizuho is better suited for the role of a scholar rather than a narrator, and at that moment, one of them turned back to the man. Podasara addressed the hero, emphasizing that everyone believes in his powers and places great hopes on him. Trotty froze for a moment. This was the first military campaign in the history of their kingdom, and he was entrusted to deliver the farewell speech before departure. The hero told everyone that they were setting out into a dangerous labyrinth for food and necessary supplies. Everyone hoped to return from there safe and sound, and the man noticed with surprise how attentively the others caught every word. It seemed they truly trusted him. Although he only had the formal role of the king's representative, the people's strangers greeted him with incredible hospitality. Here words could be costly, so one had to be careful and not say too much, because he was a soldier with his own mission, and everyone in his squad followed one clear rule. Only those who find the courage to take risks can overcome their own fears, grow in strength, and ultimately win for them. This is the only way to survive and triumph. He solemnly promises the entire people of the great kingdom of Camp Bravo to always be their shield and protector from any danger that appears on their path. The people began to look admiringly at the kingdom and at the one who represents the king. The hero looked back at the people walking beside him. All 6 companions were noticeably nervous, and he felt it immediately. Mizuo reassures everyone, "Don't worry, Taiga is nearby, the famous giant and renowned demon hunter," but one of the men hints that maybe they rely too much on Taiga, and at that moment Trudy reminds that it's time to set off, hoping for a calm journey without unforeseen events. The time has come to set out on the road ahead is the first battle with the enemy who has conquered many lands. Taiga, with faith in her eyes, addresses the girls, hoping for their support, and they confidently nod, assuring that they will always be nearby and help in the most difficult moment. The hero was convinced that in the labyrinth they would only find gray stone walls and narrow passages, but his intuition suggested something was wrong with this place. How was this labyrinth really created? Suddenly, the man who was walking ahead of everyone gave the command to stop. Trotty noticed a suspicious detail further along the route, and the messenger immediately rushed forward. All members of the squad trusted Trotty because he was always responsible for safety and checking the road. The hero asked what they had managed to find. The girl replied that someone was ahead. On the ground, they noticed many droppings. The hero ordered 6 to stay in place, and he himself, together with Mizuho, moved forward to find out to whom these tracks belonged. They approached Trotty, and she waved her hand to call them closer, but asked them not to make noise. Trotty pointed to the piles and said she had found them here. Mizuho immediately recognized the bat tracks, but Trotty drew their attention further and suggested looking more closely. There was a lot of guano lying around, but no mice nearby, and the heroes anxiously recalled. On Earth, bat guano can contain dangerous diseases. The same rules applied in this world. Mizuho confirmed, touching these remains can cause serious illness. Taiga suggested everyone cover their noses and mouths with cloth while they checked if it was safe here. Trad went with him, and Mizuho stayed in place. The girl was very irritated by this. She's also formidable in battle, and the hero knows this well, but somewhere deep in his heart creeps a troubling thought: what if they all die? Therefore, he turns to her with a request: please protect those 6 standing behind your back. Trotty noticed that Mizuo, as a minister, could quite independently command battles, and she herself only had to stand aside and observe, evaluating Mizuo's combat skills. The girl only sighed in response. Giant bats, the hero finally sighed with relief. It turned out that these creatures also live on the earth. Yet still, maybe it's time to at least slightly let go of the thread that ties one to their native land. What a pity that it fell to him. They move so fast and quietly that they become barely noticeable. The hero realizes all this turned out to be much harder than he initially thought. Tredi emotionally explains how to defeat enemies. If you manage to knock them off their feet, you will win, because the whole point is to find a way to overcome them. The conquest of new lands begins with a battle against huge bats. The girl noticed a mouse above, patiently waiting for the right moment, so she did not hesitate and was the first to attack. She jumped up, pushing off with her feet from the stone columns. Trotty quietly sneaked up to the mouse, clutching a sharp dagger in his hand. At first, she slit the throat of the first mouse, then coldly declared that the second would stay next to Tiger. The second mouse was already settled on him, but he could not find it with his eyes. The flashlight shone so dazzlingly that it hurt Trotty's eyes, and suddenly he heard the mouse start to scurry. She suddenly lunged at him from behind, but the hero managed to dodge. Now he understood how to defeat them. These creatures seek victims using echolocation. They emit a cry inaudible to humans and, like radar, navigate by the echo. Although humans do not hear echolocation, these creatures scream incredibly loudly. Their cries are so strong that the vibrations reach the ears. You just need to listen carefully, and you will definitely feel it. The mouse, holding its breath, cautiously sneaked up to the man who was just about to strike, preparing to deliver a blow. And in a moment, he mercilessly slashed the monster's belly. The girl praised the boy for a good job and added that her hint still came in handy. The boy replied that he had defeated her even before she fell, but he could not understand where she got such confidence from. Fortunately for two, not all attacked at once, only a few bats, so they finally had food. The man recalled how acquaintances talked about travels to Papua New Guinea and shared impressions about bat meat. If well fried, it can be eaten, but the taste, honestly, is very unusual. Meanwhile, third followed Mizuko. Mizuko winked with a slight mockery and greeted her friends. Trotty immediately felt she was still offended, so he suggested not to sort things out for now and instead advised Mizuko to look around more carefully. The girl approached the dead mouse and asked what it was. It rotted, perhaps it was a poisoned needle. The man asked her if she had heard anything like that before, and she, swaying slightly, explained that there are monsters that throw needles. Sometimes they are poisonous, sometimes not, but those monsters were always alive, after which the girl paused for a moment. Trotty said sternly that it was already late, this should not be eaten. It had become too dangerous, and nothing could be done about it. Suddenly one of the mice stirred, and the tiger suggested that everyone continue together. The girl followed 6 young men, and one of them noticed that there was only one path here, but it was still worth inspecting. They exited the palace through the north exit, but soon turned east. The hero noticed that a strange star flickered in Mizuho's hands here. It was called a compass. As soon as the exploration moves forward, there will be a chance to create a real map, and at that very moment, a loud scream suddenly sounded. The hero instantly recognized the messenger's voice, and the girl did too. She remembered well how Kenro spoke. Trady stood at the very edge of the wall, clutching a ledge with one hand, and with the other trying with all her might to hold Conro, so that she would not fall into the deep abyss strewn with sharp thorns, but over time her hand weakened and slowly slipped off. The taiga managed to catch her at the last moment. He warned the girl that the lid had already begun to close, and she apologized to him. When she first entered here, she did not even notice that detail. To her question, he said there was nothing strange. Noticing such a thing was almost impossible. He looked closely and noted to himself. The construction was made perfectly, the seams barely visible, but the thought did not give him peace. Why put it here, and most importantly, what is it for? It is necessary to try to find out something. She asked everyone to step back and press the button. Suddenly the ground beneath their feet parted, forming a huge pit. The hero realized that this was exactly where he wanted to leave his mark. The man still could not understand who set this trap. It turned out to be extremely complex and carefully thought out. Mizuho tells that once in this world, there was no labyrinth that appeared only after a terrible catastrophe caused by the labyrinth itself, and since then, the entire land has been in endless corridors. People say that the labyrinth is still expanding. All its passages, rooms, stairs, and other parts appeared after that great catastrophe. Then Trotty suddenly realized that the magical trap was even more insidious and dangerous than he thought. Moreover, strange creatures resembling humans live in the labyrinth, constantly rearranging walls and passages. This is the real problem. The trap is essentially a psychological clash that limits the opponent's freedom of action. To resist it, one must be able to guess the enemy's intentions, and right now we don't have that ability. They entered a room with a tree growing right in the center. Trotty beamed with joy. Finally, firewood for the campfire. Suddenly Mizuho noticed a puria, a creature that feeds on blood, and immediately warned the others to be alert, but everyone calmed down. The monster moved very slowly and did not seem like a big threat. They will have to cut branches, and several people can carry them to the palace. The food is not yet finished. Suddenly Trotty noticed something unusual. The bloodthirsty puria hunted down a tusked boar, a real delicacy. What a wonderful occasion to celebrate the founding of a new kingdom. Mizuho did not expect the mighty Subor to lose to Puria. It surprised her greatly. She even wondered if he was wounded. The hero asked if trees could grow in this place without light, but she said she had never heard of such a thing, and suddenly one of the trees unexpectedly opened its eyes. Mizuo shouted angrily that this was not just a tree, but a real treant, and asked everyone to stay away from it. The monster lunged into attack, and the hero loudly commanded everyone to retreat, but the escape route was already blocked. Puer firmly closed the exit. Trotty quickly explained that they were now within a trance, and the man called to the girl, asking her to dodge the attacks. She obeyed and did as she was told, though she did not quite understand what was expected of her. Suddenly she tripped and fell. The hero immediately shouted her name with concern, but she instantly got up and reassured him, "I'm fine, don't worry." But the treant had already grabbed her leg, and the girl instantly realized she was in danger, so she swiftly drew her dagger. She began to resist, and the hero, overwhelmed with anger, quietly whispered a curse. Trent started attacking, and the man felt that he needed to save himself first, and only then take care of others. They urgently needed to dodge his blows. Branches flew around again and again, whistling in the air, and it was simply impossible to get closer now. The monster bared its teeth and lunged straight at the heroes, and Taiga instantly surveyed the situation. The creature's body seemed completely covered with thick bark, it looked incredibly strong, and long, frightening branches stuck out from every side. Things were bad. While the monster was rooted to the ground and could not move, Mizuko needed to be pulled out from its attack zone. The hero stood up and tried to draw the monster's attention, but the creature remained indifferent, and the man irritably whispered through his teeth. He called to the girl to jump forward. She obeyed, and this timely saved her from a blow. Taiga immediately asked if she was hurt, because he was sure he was standing closest to the monster, but it suddenly lunged at the girl. Mizuko said she was fine and it seemed nothing bad had happened, but behind her stood the vampire Puria, so the girl could not even move. She froze in place, overwhelmed with fear. Pager feels that their life together is a true wild adventure, but he is sure, in this story there will definitely be a weak spot. If only Trotty were nearby. His heart was breaking with the desire to help, but there were too many Puria. It was impossible to cope alone, without risk, and saving her without falling into a trap seemed unreal. Others were also captured, so now he would have to deal with them and Mizuko himself. If the creature has eyes and a mouth, it means important organs are hidden inside, so you need to hit exactly these vulnerable spots, the eyes or the mouth. He had already noticed that because of the hard skin the animal moves slower, so if you sneak closer, attacking will be much easier. Taiga was already aiming to shoot the monster, but it suddenly began to tear roots from under the ground. The hero stood in amazement, not believing his eyes, and at that moment, Mizuko noticed the creature starting to move. The situation is getting more complicated. It is moving directly from the side of Zugo. It would be easier if it had a blind spot, then one could quietly approach, but it hunts in a large dark room. How does it manage to navigate so well in this darkness? It did not react to the scream at all. Maybe it cannot hear at all. Only a faint scent remained in the air. Sensing the smell of the one it had to catch, the creature scanned everything around with its numerous eyes and dashed forward swiftly. At first, to see, eyes are needed. His vision had long adapted to the darkness of the labyrinth, so he noticed the slightest glimmers of light or the faintest movement of a shadow from any object. Thanks to this, he could determine where his victim was hiding. It can be assumed that the monster sees almost nothing, but why did it attack Mizuko specifically? Maybe it is attracted by the scent of young girls, the hero pondered. It turns out the monster avoids him. He was trying with his last strength to wash away the smell of the demonic giant's blood that still clung to him. No matter how thoroughly he washed, the smell would not go away, and it was especially hard for him with his hypersensitive sense of smell. He caught even the faintest traces, especially when the blood was still fresh. Between the palace and this room there is only one path. The demon was definitely here, although there are no signs of a fight. This is not surprising, since Trent understands that he cannot do anything against the giant, so for the attack he chose Mizuho, not him. So it remained only to wrap him around the finger. The hero loudly addressed Mizuho to catcha. It was an incredibly bright flashlight that they found right on the ground. Taiga shouted to the girl to shine it directly at him. The girl quickly turned on the flashlight and directed the bright beam where he pointed. Trent saw a large dark shadow on the wall, and fear instantly gripped him. He rushed to attack the enemy, barely touching the fabric and inhaling its scent. He realized that his worst fears had come true, and now he was filled with determination to do everything to destroy this threat. As soon as Taiga approaches closer, the shadow dissipates, and the main character feels that victory is very near, rushes straight to Trent's eye, and gathering all his determination, firmly drives his weapon into it. But instead of retreating, the enemy struck again, and the main hero froze in confusion, did not understand what was happening at all. He skillfully dodged all the blows, feeling as if the tree was mocking him. He inflicted pain on himself and was ready to take the hit, but he did not stop and stubbornly resisted. How could the hero have attacked him specifically? One of the blows almost hit the hero, but at the last moment he dodged. He had almost no strength left to evade. Suddenly the attack stopped. The hero could not understand what had happened, and at that moment the axe struck him right in the eye. It was Trotty, who cheerfully apologized for the slight delay. Taiga called her by name, and she, recalling the promise to always stand behind and protect her, quietly apologized for not being able to meet those expectations. Mizuho calmly stated that there was nothing to worry about, and within a second, her fist hit Trent right in the eye. Trotty said that Trent was so enchanted by Taiga that he did not even notice how Mizuho saved everyone else. The girls noticed that the monster had weakened, so they decided to combine their forces and try to defeat it together. Mizuho struck the eye once again and confidently declared that right now they could not afford to lose. Trotty jumped high, reaching her hand to her eye, and shouted that the fate of all humanity now lay on their shoulders. They had no right to just stand and watch. Then she wounded Trent in the eye and ordered Taiga to finish off the opponent. The man thought Mizuho was a quiet and defenseless girl, but in reality an incredible strength was hidden in her. She was not afraid to fight when the situation demanded it. The truth is that victory comes to those who dare to take risks. The hero stepped forward toward the monster step by step. Then he struck it right in the eye, and a strange liquid splashed out from there. Trent staggered, his legs gave way, and eventually he fell, losing the fight. Tiger reported, "Mission accomplished, target eliminated without any difficulties." Finally, all 6 were released from captivity, and they were overwhelmed with relief. The bloodsucker Poeria retreated. It seemed they managed to repel the threat, and the hero did not hide his surprise. Mizuo turned out to be much younger than he had imagined. He turned to her and sincerely thanked her for the help, and she smiled in response and joked that conquering new lands was a usual matter for her. It seems the hero is slowly coming to the truth. True courage is not just fighting for oneself, but standing up to protect one's people. Now he feels that together they are conquerors of new lands. Mizuo suggested, "Let's take branches of the Pilovnik and Trendavik and then head back." Tredi admitted that she was wildly looking forward to it and was burning with anticipation. Is the meat really that tasty? Mizuo began to describe its taste in detail, and in the end, the main hero admitted that she had convinced him. They decided to start the new exploration precisely from that mysterious passage. This time, there was no need to take a bullet, but no one knew what awaited ahead. Everyone felt that the preparation had to be serious. And suddenly, someone expressed an idea that interested everyone. The hero turned around to hear the details. Suddenly, the monster noticed the crowd of people, and a demon appeared before the heroes, the body of a lion and the head of a goblin. Mizuo said that he was a real man, strong and confident, but at the same time a cruel and insidious monster. The creature curiously asked them where the human settlement was located, and the tiger immediately realized, in this world, humans sit at the very bottom of the food chain. From above, a terrible monster looked at everyone and loudly proclaimed that his lair was very close. His body was covered with thick fur, and around his head swirled a real lion's mane. Everyone froze and looked intently at him. Mizuo said that this creature is called a manticore and warned, "One must be careful because it is a dangerous, very intelligent creature." The hero looked ahead gloomily. The monsters had no intention of stopping and were persistently advancing further. He had almost no strength left, and he was confusedly thinking about what to do next. Suddenly, one of the monsters laughed out loud and declared that they had nothing to fear. He warned he would not touch them if they sacrificed someone from their own, specifically a young girl. Mizuo immediately objected, but the monster calmly replied that it was not used to discussions and would not listen to objections. He towered over everyone around, addressed the people, and sternly warned, "Do not think that anyone can behave as they please, because he could easily destroy each one right here and now." The main hero realized that escape would not save him. He froze for a moment, searching for how to fight back against the monster, but suddenly, to everyone's surprise, unexpectedly offered to make a deal with it, and the girls were shocked by this decision. He explained their country had been trampled by invaders more than once, who wanted to take these lands, but if they surrendered to the enemy, there would be no one left to fight. The people gathered in one place looked at the monster calmly and without fear. He said that if anything happened to them, the responsibility would lie with him, but he did not want people to disappear at all, so he asked him a question: "What do you think about this?" Decor kept mocking them and admitted that she herself had long noticed so many people had gathered here that there was not enough weapons for everyone. The fiend suddenly roared, reminding everyone of its old threats, and immediately ordered no one to contradict her. Her sharp scream tore the air so loudly that at that moment a flock of bats appeared overhead and rushed straight at the people. Cries echoed from all sides, but the main hero stood firm, calmly covering his face with his hand, even when monsters flew over him, and only one of the monsters hoarsely reminded that it was time to find out who was in charge here. But the main hero did not even hesitate. He boldly stepped forward straight at the monsters and destroyed everyone who tried to stop him. Swinging his sword, he easily defeated enemies one by one. He realized that the most important thing now was to save ordinary people, so he loudly called on everyone not to scatter, but to retreat in an organized manner, sticking together and supporting each other. People panicked and ran away, calling for help and hastily seeking rescue. Meanwhile, the girls fought the monsters as best they could, not giving up. Trotty exclaimed irritably that now it was clear to her this was where the whole flock had gathered, and at that moment 2 more huge bats with wide-open jaws quickly approached them. The girls confidently defeated each enemy and immediately reported another victory. Standing back to back, Trudy noticed how well they fought together, and Mizuo just smiled in response, agreeing. She noticed something strange, as if huge bats obediently obeyed the Manticor. Meanwhile, the main hero approached the monster. After encountering the giant demon and enduring an exhausting battle, he finally realized, even the most formidable monster can be defeated. Tiger confidently walked towards the Manticor, realizing that there was only one bullet left in the pistol. Without wasting a second, he aimed straight between the monster's eyes, the last, decisive shot to finally put an end to this battle. Suddenly, a bat appeared before the hero, as if deliberately blocking his path. The hero annoyedly stepped aside to bypass this unexpected obstacle. He noticed some needles sticking out of the monster's neck. Suddenly, it dawned on him these were the same needles he had once seen in two bats in the cave. Looking more closely, he noticed that this happened to others as well. Piecing these details together, he understood. The monster obeys the one who has its name, but suddenly his thoughts were interrupted by an unexpected scream. He saw a huge bat grab Conro by the shoulders and carry her somewhere upwards. The girl begged for help. Mizuo urged the main hero to shoot the bat, but he immediately refused, afraid he might hurt Conro if he fired. The Manticor slowly retreated into the darkness of the cave, knowing this was their last supper, so they were not going to rush the meal. Soon they would have to find the nest. She asked him to wait a little. The girl, along with the bats, moved forward after her. Suddenly Trotty exclaimed that they could not just let him act like that. Mizuo tried to stop her, but the girl stood her ground, and then Taga loudly promised her that they would save her since they had found her quite recently. Mizuo agreed with him, acknowledging that he was right. There really was only one road leading to the royal palace, but the main heroine firmly warned, "Let's not follow without caution, because the enemy has helpers who can prepare an ambush." He guessed that these could be poisonous needles. The girl silently nodded. She had felt it for a long time. She still could not believe that now these needles obeyed only her commands. The man suggested it would be best to find all the necessary things and return to the previous place. He assured that if everyone helped, they could build a reliable shelter. People liked this idea so much that they immediately agreed to participate. Meanwhile, Tiger promised the girls that they would definitely help Conro, and the girls gladly supported the plan. Soon they were making their way through the dark dungeon. The main character held the light ahead and warned they had a serious problem. They entered the room from which several corridors stretched in different directions. The man was sure that they would definitely find some clues here. Mizuo picked up his thought and suggested thoroughly inspecting every corner. Trotty said that they decided to pursue the monster following the call of the heart, but she was still worried whether they would succeed, as the main character had only one bullet left. Tiger agreed with her and said with a bitter tone in his voice that it was precisely because of this that he could not shoot from afar. At that moment, Mizuo announced that she had found something important. She suggested taking a closer look, and then they noticed that the arch had disappeared. This meant it had been uprooted, probably by some huge creature, and she agreed and quietly said that this was exactly where that monster appeared. The girl was sure the monster's lair awaited them right at the end of this path. Trotty agreed with her and suggested heading there, but the man begged not to rush and reminded her once again of his warnings. The monster did not want to instantly destroy the prey, so they had to hurry, and that meant only one thing: they were already waiting for them there. Trotty asked why they shouldn't try to prepare an ambush, but she was explained that it was not so simple. It would be very difficult to approach the enemies unnoticed and attack them from behind. She confirmed it is true, but noted, his servants are not only huge bats. The man involuntarily pondered, even a simple domestic cat sometimes suddenly attacks, and it is not easy to hold it back, let alone a huge monster with a human face. He decided that they needed to immediately come up with a plan. Their idea was to lure the enemy into a trap they had seen before. Trotty supported this idea and said that if everything worked out, the enemy could be defeated with one blow. Mizuo then began to ask how exactly they intended to lure the enemy to that very place. They dared to speak with him, although they themselves barely believed that it would be possible to find common ground with this monster. It seemed almost impossible to outsmart him. People meant nothing to him. He considered them simply trash. Their hope has not yet faded. If this plan does not work, they have a backup option plan. Be carefully making their way through dark, narrow passages cluttered with junk. They eventually found themselves in the very lair of the monster. The main character entered the room and quietly asked if he had been expected. The other raised his hand and apologized for lying earlier, then inquired if the main character was angry with him. Turning to him, Manticor said that she was the one who called them here and that he appeared at her summons. She asked if he understood that he was risking his life here, and he replied that he hoped for her kindness. She said that he was really strange. He was not afraid of her at all. He raised his hands up and assured that he had never said such a thing. Then she asked if he liked this place. The tiger could not comprehend her. She began to tell that once upon a time there was a huge kingdom on this spot, which she had utterly destroyed, killed its ruler, deprived the people of hope, and drove them into constant fear, forcing them to see her as the embodiment of their despair. Having said this, she laughed as if her words gave her genuine pleasure. Those who feared death went to extremis, even sacrificing their own children, and those who had none betrayed their comrades. She longed to feel these emotions again by destroying his kingdom. It was for this very reason that the monster called them to its lair. Upon hearing this, the main character understood. There was no way to resolve it peacefully anymore. He would have to act according to Plan B. At that moment, Trady threw a pistol at the main hero. He swore he would make her feel true despair, and Manticor only smiled and admitted that she had long ago understood where they were hiding. Again deciding to attack people and unleash huge bats on them, she opened her jaws and shouted with all her might that all people must disappear. Taiga decisively ordered Mizuho to begin the offensive. She loudly warned everyone no one was to look back, no matter what happened, then dived into magic, and suddenly a dazzling light flooded everything around. Bats began to fall to the ground one after another, piercingly squeaking and screaming, and the Manticore, not understanding where this strange light came from, involuntarily closed her eyes from the unbearable flash. Trotty realized that the monster turned out to be much more naive than everyone thought, and gave him advice. From now on, be more careful, and do not lose vigilance in relationships with people. At that moment, Tago decisively rushed forward and called on everyone to forget about the bats, focusing all their power only on attacking the Manticore. The girls agreed with his words and decisively entered the fight. At that moment, the monster became even more dangerous. It bristled its tail, which now resembled a bunch of black sharp needles, and loudly screaming to scare the opponents and show them who was the boss here, rushed into the attack. It confidently moved forward, not taking their eyes off the goal, when suddenly the main hero loudly commanded everyone to immediately fall to the ground, and at that moment the monster's tail released an incredible number of sharp spikes with tremendous force, which flew at a crazy speed straight at the bats and people. Mizuko screamed and quickly ducked down, escaping the dangerous attack, and only then noticed that poisonous needles were flying in the air. The man loudly shouted that everyone was doing the right thing, and the people bowed their heads before her. At that moment, Trotty had already approached almost up close, clutching a dagger in her hand and preparing to strike. When the monster noticed her, it swung its tail again, as if warning everyone, stay away. But the girl easily dodged every attack as if it were a game. Smiling, she calmly said that she hadn't even thought about it, it was none of her business. The hero quietly sneaked up behind the Manticore, thinking he remained unnoticed, but the Manticore instantly felt his presence, and deciding that the enemy was too confident, quickly rushed into attack, but the hero quickly retreated and skillfully dodged the blow. He asked her if she really thought that he had no bullets left, while mentally noting that there was only one left in his pocket, and it needed to be saved until the very end. There were no poisonous spikes left on the monster's tail, so she decided to go on the offensive and rushed forward, widely opening her jaws and showing sharp claws. She shouted that she would destroy him before he could do anything. The hero did not hesitate for a moment. With his weapon ready, he rushed straight at her. His main task was to hit her right in the eye, so he patiently waited for the right moment, and when the time came, he shot the monster right in the face, and the powerful blow threw her several steps back. The girls watched with curiosity at what was happening, trying to understand if they had managed to overcome the monster. Taiga aimed straight at its eye, but the creature only blinked its healthy eye and smiled ominously. She struck the paw next to the main hero, and fragments of the floor scattered around. The man realized that the rival had dodged and raised his head to see her reaction. He was glad that he had knocked out her left eye. Now he understood that he could attack from the side that had become blind to her, but suddenly she screamed as if sensing his intentions and warned him not to dare underestimate her. At that moment, dark spikes appeared again at the tip of her tail. Peggle could not believe how lightning fast the enemy got back on its feet. He shouted loudly to the girls to run and hide in the neighboring rooms as quickly as possible, and hearing him, they did not hesitate. They scattered in different directions, each to her own side. The monster roared loudly, confidently declaring that no one would escape. It promised to plunge everyone into despair and tear them to pieces. The powerful roar of the beast made everything around tremble. Bats like black shadows silently flew through the ruined corridors, searching for those who had managed to escape. They looked into every room, leaving no corner unattended. Taiga thoughtfully watched the giant bats that were still flying nearby. Although there were fewer of them, these creatures still caused a lot of trouble. For a moment he wondered if everything was okay with the girls, but he confidently knew they would manage now. He needed to focus on how to defeat the Manticore. When he entered the room, it seemed to him as if he had found himself in a stable. If a drink was needed now, from everything here, he could even make a Molotov cocktail, and if he was lucky enough to find some gunpowder, that would be even better. He firmly decided this was the best find of everything here. He thought that these things were remnants after the death of those who once lived here. Suddenly, he noticed a figure ahead. The hero instantly realized that Conra was in the room. He carefully looked around, made sure no one was nearby, and quietly slipped inside, whispering her name. He asked if she was okay, but she only asked him not to come closer. The boy was confused. He did not understand the reason for her words, and suddenly noticed some strange substance beginning to appear on the ceiling above him. Suddenly he felt as if he had plunged into water, but after thinking a little he realized it was not water at all. That is why the Manticore sensed the slime's approach and rejoiced, because thanks to this it was able to find them. Taiga and Conra were delayed inside the monster, finding themselves in a real trap. They immediately understood that they were inside a living creature that was gradually pulling them in, and if nothing changed, their lives would soon come to an end. Suddenly a dull rumble sounded. Heavy paws of a giant monster were stomping on the ground. In a moment they saw a huge shadow of the Manticore looming over them. The main character immediately felt the situation was becoming dangerous. Suddenly the axe hit the very core of the monster, and the slime's body instantly shattered into pieces, allowing the heroes to break free from the trap. When they looked back, Mizuo was standing before them, who had come to save them. She sharply pointed to a dark passage in the half-ruined wall and sternly ordered everyone to immediately get up and head there. Her face was focused and serious. The monster peeked into the room, but the girl was no longer there. It instantly realized that the victim had disappeared, and, enraged by the slime's helplessness, muttered that people should not hope for an easy or quick death. Taiga sincerely thanked the girl for the advice. She suggested that slimes are easy to wash away with water. They are not very strong, but they can drain life energy, and if you manage to catch a slime, you must definitely destroy its core. Suddenly one of the wall parts shifted, and someone's hand emerged from the dark passage. Trady entered the room with a joyful smile. She felt relieved, because everyone was safe and unharmed, and Mizuho turned around in surprise, not understanding how she managed and found the secret passage. The girl said she realized it the moment a light breeze passed through the cracks between the bricks. This place was once part of a great kingdom, and secret passages were arranged here in advance in case of danger. Such agility and cleverness could indeed be expected from someone who once earned a living by stealing. The girl admitted. She was convinced there were still more secret paths hidden here, and at least one of them definitely led beyond the kingdom's borders. In the room she had just passed, slimes popped out. She realized that these creatures lived here, and the main character froze for a moment, then turned to her. He wanted to check something. Trotty looked around and felt that they had found themselves in a warehouse. Taiga noticed a pile of unfamiliar things, took one of them, and asked to look at a powder resembling wheat flour. The girls were convinced that it really was a flower, and gasped. Such plants were almost never found in his world, and the boy calmly replied, "In fact, flowers are not that rare. He just never imagined that girls could create them. They said they could grow wheat if the stars lit up their fields, but nothing sprouts in complete darkness." Taiga looked at the man lying on the ground and realized he only managed to grab a sack of flour, although he had enough food. It seemed that while he tried to save his supplies, others destroyed everything. Thus the story of this kingdom ended sadly. Hidden passages are useless if no one suspects them. Those people barely endured their existence. It was hard for them even to eat anything. The main character decided that he would no longer live like that, but the girls did not understand what he meant. He could not allow his people to fall into the same trouble. Showing a small bag, she addressed the girls and said that she had something capable of destroying the monster. Sneaking cautiously through hidden corridors, they did not take their eyes off the Manticore. Taking their bags, the friends said they were ready and moved on. Jumping into the corridor right in front of the monster, they instantly realized to throw their things and run as fast as they could. The monster, seeing the smoke, decided that they would not come up with anything trickier. She laughed cheerfully and confidently said that she still had plenty of powerful strikes in reserve. She added that it was not worth hoping such simple tricks would not work on her. She stood amid the smoke and said that she knew everything, understood why they turned to her specifically, and why they left the others behind. One thing surprised her. Could it be that they failed to find a better way to defeat her? She instantly realized these people naively tried to take away her ability to move freely. They expected her to emerge from the smoke and were going to trap her. Even Poidu himself noticed that she was too talkative. Taiga asked him if these monsters scared him, confessing that this question helped calm her own nerves. At that moment the monster loudly reminded him to be cautious, but Taiga just laughed and assured that she was much stronger than these creatures. They only had left to apologize to her and hope for forgiveness. The main character was sure that the girls were safe now, and told her that he was going to show something really interesting. The man watched intently to see what they would show him now. Another said he had a gift for him, and just then, as smoke curled in the air, a pistol appeared in his hands. At that moment, tiny particles around the monster suddenly scattered in an explosion. A loud mineral flash sounded, and the monster shuddered from unbearable pain. The main character suddenly dashed away. He knew there is nothing more terrifying than an explosion in a confined space. The shockwave spread lightning fast, swallowing everything around, and escaping it was almost impossible. The man raced with all his might. The wave was already approaching very close, so he had to find a safe place as quickly as possible. Flames rose around him and covered him from all sides, but a layer of liquid burst forth in defense slime that covered his body and saved him from the fire. Destroying its core, it shed the remaining slime and promised itself not to do that again. Suddenly, a part of the roof fell beside him with a loud crash. It instantly became very dangerous around the building was about to collapse. The monster spoke up and said it knew the reason. This explosion happened because of technologies from another world. She noticed that he was probably not from this world, he came here from afar. Laughing, she said that no ordinary person could defeat her. After that, he approached her closer and quietly whispered that he had one question for her. He thoughtfully asked if she knew anything about a man with a bird's head and a glowing staff, and also about another with sharp fangs, who hides entirely in the fog. It seemed his question shocked the Manticor. Taiga explained that these very people had brought him into this labyrinth, so now he was searching for them. In response, she said she knew them. One of them lives above the dungeon, the other deep inside it. The first is named Kiris, the second Dipvan, and when the main character heard these names, he was pierced by unease. The beast clearly showed that he was not ordinary. These creatures followed him, but he never figured out why they united and pursued him as a group. Another roof collapsed, and stones fell directly on the monster. Taiga again asked what she meant. She replied that they were ready to sacrifice everything to destroy each other. She already wanted to add something, but the stones suddenly buried her from head to toe. The main character froze in place, stunned, and barely uttered a few words out of despair. At that moment, everything collapsed. Massive beams crashed down right in front of the girls, and they, frightened, screamed loudly, calling the main character for help. They argued whether the explosive charge was too strong and couldn't decide what to do next. Trotty wanted to immediately rush after, but suddenly, the main character appeared from a secret passage and said that he had been near them all along. The girls lit up with joy when he returned, and he assured them that he believed in their success and said it was time to return to the palace. As soon as they stepped outside, people erupted with joyful shouts. Everyone greeted the return of their king and sincerely believed that now their country awaited prosperity and happiness. The girls sincerely promised that the greetings for the main characters would be remembered forever, and the man with a joyful smile announced the start of the festive banquet. Everyone felt that it was time to celebrate the success of the first expedition. Finally, everyone gathered in one room, ready to discuss the situation together. Noticing the drink with Tiger, Mizuo couldn't resist and asked what it was. Tiger replied that he brewed a drink from tree roots. Mizuo guessed that it was probably some unusual tea. It seemed that labyrinth tea was of great value to them, and everyone was puzzled, whether it had been preserved in the same form until now. But that remained a mystery, however. It was clear there was no shortage of flour. There was a lot of it. Perhaps these people own large fields. The main character could not understand how such a large country simply disappeared from the face of the earth. Trotty noticed his sad mood, remarked that it did not suit him to look so gloomy, supported him, and advised not to lower his head, and suddenly friends announced that they had prepared a gift for him. She showed him a necklace and said that she decided to keep it for herself because she no longer saw anyone to wear it. He smiled in response and joked that it was not surprising. Even former thieves remain themselves, and Mizuho added that this ornament looked like a real royal treasure. Taiga was sure that they were lucky to get out of there alive and unharmed. Moreover, they stocked up on a bunch of provisions and learned new details about those strangers. It was a real trial, incredibly difficult. Fortunately, everyone survived, and now it wouldn't hurt to find some tea. Many good friends appeared around him. The girl asked if he liked the tea. He smiled and said that this drink reminded him of something important. Perhaps this is exactly how victory tastes. Mizuho smiled cheerfully, adjusted her glasses, and told the boys that yesterday she heard about their successful return from the first expedition. They did not flinch. They endured the attack of a whole swarm of giant bats, bravely fought a large ant, and finally defeated the treacherous Manticor. Finally, they took the first decisive step in creating the great kingdom of Bravo. Excitement prevailed around. People watched her unbreakable will in awe. Meanwhile, she suggested everyone look together at the rewards they had already obtained. Their luck smiled upon them. They found the bark and branches of the ant tree, gathered lianas, reached the bones and tusks of a wild boar, and also obtained the skin of huge bats and the poisonous needles of the Manticor. Taiga realized that you cannot take all the things at once, and he wondered whether to return for the leftovers later, but Trotty was against it and insisted that it was not worth returning there. She explained, scavengers live in the labyrinth, they devour everything that remains from defeated monsters, so probably there is nothing left there anymore. Mizuho suggested first listing all the obtained resources in order, and only then deciding together how best to use them. The main hero calmly said that, in his opinion, there was no need to worry about this at all. While he was speaking, the girl was already carefully sorting the branches and assigning tasks to everyone on what to do with them. Trotty smiled and added that it seemed she really liked dealing with various papers. Tiger turned to the girl and asked if she already knew how they would use these resources. The girl replied that if they approached the matter wisely, they could at least somewhat revive their kingdom. The girl smiled and reminded once again to call her the minister. Everyone around had no doubt truly deserved this title. Tiger tore some fruit from a tree and asked what it was. Mizuho replied that it was the ant fruit, and Trotty was quite confused, did not expect that Tiger would really want to try it. She explained that this fruit grew on a terrifying monster that devours people. The man noted that perhaps poison hides inside it. At that moment, he cut the fruit's skin. She also became interested in what he was doing. He explained that he wanted to find out if the fetus feels pain and how it would react if touched slightly with a knife. In the end, he decided that everything seemed normal. If nothing changes in 15 minutes, put it in your mouth. If there is still no reaction in 5 minutes, bite a little. If the taste is bitter but you feel a surge of strength, suck the juice and spit out the pulp. If no strange sensations appear or health worsens within 8 hours, you can eat half the fruit and wait another 8 hours. If everything is fine again, then you can eat a little more fruit and carefully monitor your condition for the next 24 hours. Trotty did not quite understand all these subtleties, so Taiga simply explained, if everything goes well, this fruit can be eaten, and if something goes wrong, it will make delicious jam. Then Trotty asked the minister what their further plans were. They found themselves in a hall where huge columns towered. Everyone began to guess what kind of place it was. The girl suggested that it was probably a warehouse. She pulled a necklace out of her pocket and showed it to everyone around. Trotty did not understand why she decided to display the found jewelry. Mizuko said that if they go deeper into the dungeon, they might come across new treasures, and then he will definitely need someone who can protect him. Therefore, she decided to offer Trotty to become the guardian of the royal treasures. Upon hearing this, the girl blushed and turned red. It was hard for her to believe that she was entrusted with such an important matter. Once the girl lived as a thief, she could easily quietly take these things and just run away, as she had done more than once before. The minister told her he did not know anyone who could handle this better, and it was unlikely that there was another such skilled thief in the entire kingdom. She felt embarrassed when she heard these words. At first, the main heroine thought it was just a trick and she had missed something, but eventually she realized, Trotty really fits this role. Mizuo added that even if she wanted to run away, she would have nowhere to hide, so he entrusted this task to her. She was so happy she couldn't sit still. She rushed to hug the minister, but she skillfully stepped aside, and the girl fell to the ground in pain. Mizuo sternly warned her not to come closer. Trotty did not understand why everything turned out that way. She lay on the ground and quietly cried from hurt. The priest approached the main heroine, and noticing that the Manticor needles had disappeared, asked where they had gone, and the girl simply replied, "These needles are very dangerous, so she took them and keeps them with her. If such a terrible Manticor appears again on their path, it will be extremely difficult to deal with it. Therefore, he decided that it would be wiser to use their powers in battle. If they manage to return the handkerchief, they will be able to use it in battle." Trotty was stunned by this act and noted that the boy really resembles a ninja with poisoned needles. Taiga could not understand why he found himself among ninjas. The girls explained that he was just like them, and this deeply impressed him. To avoid thinking about it, Taiga suggested taking up sorting resources again. Then he approached the minister and asked what to do next. The girl said that the kingdom needs to be developed by improving infrastructure, and the main hero immediately noticed that she really liked this idea. Meanwhile, she teased him with a smile, calling him a ninja, which annoyed him a little, so he asked her to stop. The residents gathered around the campfire and began to discuss what to do next. After the discussion, they decided that they would need even more ropes to create the necessary structure. Strong branches of the anthill helped them made meat dryers from them, so they did not have to eat all the boar's prey in one day. The young man also wondered if they covered the dryers with a blanket so that the smoke would stay inside better. The girl explained that you can even roast insect meat with smoke, and the man, surprised by their skills, thought how good it was that they could come up with such simple and useful things. At that moment, someone called him, and he sincerely admitted he dreams of his own cooking fireplace but has no idea where to start building it. Trotty assured that this way they could cook an even tastier dish, and Taiga also shared a thought, recalled an interesting thing he once heard from a survival instructor. I wanted to find out what new thing he had learned, so I asked him, and he just smiled. I said it was about a stove from Yukon, noted that it is better to see with your own eyes than to listen to stories, so he suggested starting from the very beginning and gathering all the necessary materials. First of all, we needed to find stones and clay. They set to work with determination. First, they carefully mixed the clay, then began to lay stones in a circle, leaving a small opening for the products, and then stacked the stones higher, choosing heavier ones so that their stove would not collapse. They will mold a strong clay base, and on top they will place a flat, smooth stone. It is on this that all the heat will accumulate. Mizuo asked if they would leave the pot in the same place, and he replied that now they would use it as an oven, and assured that everything was already prepared. The head chef was delighted with such a solution. Looking at her, Padezala smiled and said that now he had everything to cook any dish, and the tigress allowed him to do with her as he wished. The man almost cried with happiness. When he lost his shop, it seemed to him that the world had ended for him, but now he had new hope. He decided to do everything possible to reopen the store, and from now on promised to always cook the tastiest dishes for the one who saved him. The main character thought that it seemed he would never get used to such words of gratitude. Trotty beamed with joy and asked to prepare a fruit dessert for her, but the men only looked at her tensely and unfriendly. Taiga decided that for the good of the kingdom, one must listen to others he knew well. When the right time comes, one should ask what the common people want. Trotty suggested installing another oven to cook more food and boil more water, but the man replied that one oven was enough for now. First, he wanted to make a workshop for blacksmithing. They watched as the water rushed down rapidly and realized the task would not be easy, but there is water here, so the place is perfect. Taiga saw that they were lost in thought and asked what had happened. The girl explained that the smelting furnace required a lot of fuel, and now it was very difficult to get coal or something similar, so the man asked if it was possible to use magic instead. Without a powerful fire, neither weapons nor tools could be forged. He said that such a method really exists. For example, one can capture the heat of a star. That is exactly how monsters do it, or they draw energy directly from the labyrinth itself. Mizuo explained that this power is connected with disasters in the labyrinth. Its influence can change the properties of even ordinary objects. In any case, almost all the tools disappeared, so restoring the forge became almost impossible, and the minister only sighed deeply. She said what it means they will not be able to build a prison. Trotty felt indignation. She was looking straight at him when she said this. The woman gently calmed her and asked not to worry, assuring that as soon as she recovers a little she herself will solve this problem. She just needs to rub the anvil between her palms until it melts, and everyone around watched with admiration to see what would happen next. Trotty could not hold back his emotions, and with tension, addressed the main heroine, asking her to explain everything at least a little, begging her not to be nervous and promising that together they would definitely find the anvil. She was already about to leave, but smiling, said that forging knives and cauldrons is her job, so she is in no hurry, and if something needs to be forged, it is enough just to call her. At that moment, a man approached and reported that he had completed his task. Tiger asked if they had enough ropes, and in response, they reassured him, "Don't worry, we have already cut grapevines, soaked them in water, and braided strong ropes." Tiger suddenly realized, everything here happens just like on Earth. He decided to ask if they came up with this themselves. They answered that it was indeed their idea. The main character praised the tiger for a job well done. The minister asked in surprise what exactly he had assigned to do. He showed a rope with attached plates and explained that he ordered such an alarm system for himself. He thought it was quite a good solution to protect against unwanted guests. The minister asked again, and Treddy told that demon scouts brought a giant monster with them. Fortunately, they managed to catch up and destroy this demon still in the labyrinth. If not, and the monster had reached here, they would have had big trouble. The main character noticed that it could very well happen that a squad of scouts accidentally wanders into their territory, and asked if they had thought about what would happen if those decided to attack. Mizuo explained that it all depends on the number of enemy troops, so it is difficult to make predictions now. She suggested that the huge demon might have been the main enemy of these lands, and after its defeat, they would no longer have to worry, and Taiga noticed her confidence and optimism with surprise. Trotty asked what would happen now to the conquered lands, such as the Antish Hills. The minister quietly explained that the kingdom can dispose of the new territories at its discretion, so from now on all these lands belong to the king himself. Taiga suddenly realized that the kingdom in the labyrinth consists of many rooms connected to each other. When they approached the very entrance, the girls curiously turned to him and asked what to do next. Mizuo also spoke about their possessions, and calmly said that outside the kingdom, they currently do not own any buildings, and the main character clarified what exactly she meant. Say probably it was a farm or a smithy. He understands smithies are usually built near water. At first, small separate rooms are constructed, which later grow into large buildings. Taiga understood this is really a good idea. For their kingdom to grow, they need to turn each room into a separate building, and the minister also approved this proposal. He said that if you think about it, Ant Hill with its fertile lands is a truly ideal place for a farm. Saying this, he briefly remembered his old home. Mizuo agreed and smiled, saying that it is indeed a good idea. This way they can get food for themselves, and Trady glanced sideways at the cave with large bats and asked about it, because it seemed to her that they were of little use. They are closely connected to the hill, so obviously include them in the kingdom. She was confirmed that she was right, but was immediately asked if she did not think that this might cause difficulties. When they approached the mountain covered with stalactites, the girl noticed that there were whole piles of bat guano lying around. She said that they really can get out of here, but the cave itself will not become cleaner because of this, so she became interested if something could be done about this problem. The man paused for a moment, pondering her question. The minister firmly said that this issue must be resolved in any case. If they really build a farm on the hill, water will have to be led exactly through these caves, so the man decided it's time to start collecting manure. Freddy heard these words with surprise and immediately explained. On Earth, farmers add manure to fertilize the soil, so he decided to try this method here. Maybe there is orthophosphoric acid in the manure, which is considered a good fertilizer. Suddenly he remembered. He once heard that gunpowder can be made from saltpeter. Maybe this will work in this world too. He asked if they knew that gunpowder can be made from bat guano, and Trotty replied that she had already heard about this somewhere. Even before the war, manure cost a lot. People sold it for incredible sums, and somehow Mizuo received an order to steal this manure, which surprised her greatly. She could not believe that the girl really did that. In response, the girl asked not to humiliate her. She had already refused, but the man noted that this only gives grounds to think that he can be used as fertilizer. Trotty had a fleeting thought to sell her, but the minister immediately waved it off. Now it was not possible. First they needed to decide on foreign policy. Then she threw out another idea, maybe use this stuff for gunpowder. If they really wanted to get through the labyrinth, they definitely needed to arm themselves and take all the necessary equipment with them, but Mizuo was a little worried that others might consider her plan inappropriate. Trotty asked the main character how to make gunpowder, and he explained that first you need to get saltpeter. It is evaporated from manure, and during this, an unbearable stench will hang in the air. Mizuo noticed that this hill was much bigger than it had seemed to her before. She said aloud that if all the moss were removed, nice farmland could be made here, but the man looked at her in surprise. He did not even know what a farm was. Looking around, he noticed that there was no trace left of the ant, and immediately guessed it was the work of the same vultures. They had spent a lot of effort to take the remains of the ant to their shelter, and managed it in just one night, and then he wondered what had happened to the vines. When the girl lit them, she noticed that everything seemed to freeze and calmly stay in place. The main character asked if she was really sure they did not need to be removed. Mizuo replied, "The main thing is to be careful, then everything will be fine. They will grow, feeding on insects and small animals, but that is normal because that is how you can get even more ropes from them. If danger suddenly occurs, everyone could hide in the Manticor's lair." They even thought about building a fence just in case, and finally decided that it was a good idea. But then Trotty suddenly exclaimed that it seemed they had forgotten something very important. Everyone froze. Would it be possible to grow anything without the sun? Their thoughts coincided, and they agreed with each other. Then the main character came up with his own idea, and the minister immediately asked what exactly he proposed. In the Manticor storage, there were many secret passages that could be used, and the girls realized that the clue led exactly here, so with anxious curiosity, they decided to definitely inspect these places a little later. He asked if it was possible to obtain seeds or rice, and if it was even realistically possible to find them in the labyrinth. The girls replied that some options do exist, but each of them is associated with certain difficulties. Previously, these things were obtained by negotiating with other kingdoms or buying from traveling merchants, but after the underground storm, everything changed. They found themselves in a difficult situation. They knew nothing about the surrounding places, and it was no easier for the traders. The storm had destroyed all the trade routes familiar to them. Taiga pondered what had happened earlier and suddenly realized that they were completely alone, cut off from the entire world. But despite all this, he did not feel any threat to himself at all. Their position was secure, so they moved forward calmly, and the girls smiled reassuringly that they would definitely find a way out of any situation. He never stopped dreaming about what their kingdom would become. Before his eyes appeared a vivid picture of hope. They stood together in the middle of a wide space where confidence in the future prevailed. People were energetically working with hoses, cultivating the new field, and the main character remembered how a few years ago he had been in Southeast Asia. In Brunei, he stood wearing sunglasses and looked up at the sky. He found himself in the very heart of a dense forest, no one around, only tall trees and thick bushes, and the boy realized that he seemed to have lost the guide. Looking around, he realized there was no training here. He did not like these jungles at all, but the order was clear not to fall behind the others, and now the moment had come to find out why exactly here he felt so defenseless. Suddenly an orangutan appeared before him and looked at him attentively. The animal quietly made a sound, after which they exchanged glances for some time, as if studying each other. The girls called him persistently, and he finally tore himself away from his thoughts. They asked with curiosity why he was looking thoughtfully into the distance, and the boy quietly replied that he just remembered how once an orangutan kindly helped him. The girls did not catch his words and asked again if he was perhaps just tired. A lot of time had passed since then. He agreed that it was probably fatigue, but thoughts about how fragile and unprotected everything around was did not leave him. They did not stop interrogating him about what exactly he meant. He explained what, in his opinion, they needed to survive in this place. Then he asked everyone, don't they think they know too little about this labyrinth? Imagine, people found themselves in the middle of the jungle. With nothing at all will they be able to survive. The jungle is teeming with dangers and hidden threats, but the most important thing is different. Only those who find the real safe place will survive. And in the labyrinth it is the same. It is time to stop wandering aimlessly so that no one disappears. He firmly believes that they will find the way out, and Trotty emphasizes, along the way they have already won several victories. Ibanez told him so many interesting things about life in the jungle. It was knowledge gained over years. Then he asked the girls if they understood that danger could strike suddenly, and if they knew how to defend themselves from the Manticor. He was sure they really needed an experienced mentor. The minister finally felt what Treddy was talking about when mentioning their defenselessness. Treddy explained that if there is even one person who knows something about these monsters, they will be able to avoid many troubles and sufferings. The main character always avoided dangers in every possible way, but what else to expect from weapons if even ordinary medicine is impossible to get? Now even the smallest scratch can turn into a big trouble. Suddenly Trotty screamed in pain unexpectedly, and the main character immediately anxiously asked if she was okay. The girl reassured him, saying that everything was fine. It was just that the wooden hoe turned out to be not very strong, and added that they needed to be more careful. The minister approached. Her voice was calm but determined. Show me your wound, I have to wash it. The girl waved it off. Thank you, but I already feel better. Then the tiger remarked, if you don't treat the wound it will get worse. Only after that did she, embarrassed, sigh and agree to show the wound. Sometimes people caught diseases from microbes that penetrated even the smallest wounds. You can never guess what ailments you will have to face here, so it is best to immediately think that unfamiliar diseases lie ahead. Now they only have water and a few pieces of cloth at hand, which can only be used to bandage wounds, and it is scary to imagine what this can lead to over time. Early in the morning, the Minister of Clothing woke up, stretched, admiring the beginning of a new day, and said with a smile that the morning was especially beautiful. She decided to go wash up while everyone around was still peacefully sleeping, but at that moment, a suspicious man was lurking behind the column. The girl slowly approached the body of water, her thoughts revolving around the tiger's advice. He always said to take care of yourself so as not to get sick and catch something dangerous. Suddenly she felt that someone was watching her. At that moment she noticed Trotty, who was shaking dust from her hands, and exclaimed, "Why are you already here? It's still early, you could have slept longer." But Trotty declared that she had done nothing and did not understand what it was about, and at these words Mizuho's gaze became truly anxious and fearful. Mizuho stepped back behind the screen and pondered why the other girl was trying to peek. She slowly took off her clothes, preparing to bathe. Her cheeks reddened from the cold. She knew the water was probably icy too, but nearby a warm fire crackled, by which one could warm up. Turning back, she noticed a man peacefully sleeping by the fire. Later the man laughed and sincerely apologized. He did not know he had accidentally entered the women's bathhouse. Then he introduced himself, Latin from 5 stars, a traveling merchant. He asked where to find the king of this country. Mizuho explained that the country was temporarily ruled by Taiga. The man nearby only confirmed her words. Trotty did not even notice when Taiga managed to approach. Latin threw into the conversation. The main hero is not simple at all, as he might seem at first glance. The minister again asked him what he thought about trade. He said that he was a merchant who trades with entire kingdoms. People often call him a trader. He travels the labyrinth from one country to another, buying up surplus goods and helping people find what they lack. Tiger inquired if he wanted to engage in wholesale trade, but the man said he was not interested. He only sells in small batches. After that, he invited Taiga to look at his goods, and the main hero immediately noticed the animal the seller was holding on a leash. He replied, "It's a goldfish, isn't that obvious? Maybe some of them just hadn't seen it before." The tiger admitted he had already met this goldfish, but still one question remained: why was it hanging in the air? He lightly coughed, blushed, and shyly admitted that he was embarrassed to talk about it, but in fact nothing was happening between them. The other just laughed in response, and noted that it was clear even without words. The merchant admitted that he had never heard of this kingdom. Before he said it appeared exactly when chaos arose in the labyrinth, and a terrible storm broke out, not ordinary at all and deadly dangerous. He himself barely survived those events, and some of his clients could not be saved at all. The main hero recalled that he had already mentioned this before. They had no money at all, but he still had one more question. Meanwhile, the merchant rummaged in his bag, looking for something inside. He immediately replied that he does not give loans. Who knows if their kingdom will exist tomorrow, and Taiga offered him a completely different deal. Once he served in the army and gained considerable experience in this matter, now he is looking for a new master and is even ready to give half of what he earns. When the girls heard this offer, they could not believe it was true. The merchant could not hide his shock. He did not believe that the ruler really wanted to become a mercenary. Mizuho exclaimed indignantly that this was no joke. He was going to leave them for the sake of earning money, and everyone was counting on him, so she could not agree with such a decision. She did not let the ruler leave her lands, and Taiga asked her to wait a little. He still needed a mentor. Having moved to another country, he could very well encounter a new ruler or experienced mercenaries who would teach him how to survive in the mysterious labyrinth. While he is not around, he decided to hire guards to calmly know that they are safe, but the girl immediately refused. This is not at all what she asked for, and the merchant could not help but laugh because he did not expect such an answer. He had met many rulers in his life, but never encountered one like this. The offer was tempting, but trust is too serious a matter, so the hero had to refuse and sincerely apologize. The girl sighed with relief, but Antigas suggested ending it there, and only the merchant restrained him. He still wanted to offer them something. One of them trades land and even knows how to sell people, that is, send workers abroad, but says that even this is difficult now. Hard times have come, so he decided that the only way out is trading information. In those times, even the smallest rumor was valuable. Tales, legends, old maps, or samples from magical laboratories could buy them a little more life. Information is very important for merchants as well. They are constantly looking for where they can earn well, so he asked them what they thought about this and if they had any news about profitable trades. Miso said that her family had long been engaged in storytelling. She had known many legends and ancient stories since childhood. The boy became interested and asked her to share one of them. Miso agreed, and he in return promised that he would reward her well someday. The main character felt that the agreement finally worked. Trotty realized that his idea had completely failed. Taiga picked up this thought and said that it seemed the girl was offended. She quietly admitted that she understood his intentions well. After all, she had acted like that more than once, but with Mizuho everything was different, because she had her own special story related to this. Once a man left his wife and went to the city to look for the labyrinth. When he finally decided everything and hurried home, suddenly a wall grew before him when he had never seen before. This phenomenon is called the changing labyrinth. It happens quite often. She does not know how it was in the world from which he came, but here separation means finality. If you have parted, it is forever. A few days ago, Mizuho had to part with her friends, and the main character understood that even if he changed his mind, she would still try to stop him. They noticed how the minister and the merchant exchanged handshakes. Treddy did not wait. She approached to find out how they were doing. She always stood out for her quick wit, although sometimes she got nervous quickly. The girl sincerely admitted that she also did not want him to leave, because without him, it would be very boring here. The merchant was beaming with joy. The deal succeeded. He promised to bring even more goods next time, but asked not to tell others about it, and the main character had only one request for him. If only it were possible to exchange this item immediately, he would gladly take a pistol. It was then that Leighton proposed to make their first deal. The tiger was unarmed, carrying only a few necessary things. Suddenly he remembered that he was missing something, and the merchant noticed this, asking what he needed this time. The tiger thought and asked the seller if he had tea. People asked the merchant if he was really going on a journey. The merchant confirmed this, thanked everyone for their hospitality, and said that he had managed to arrange profitable trades. Mizuho said that their first meeting turned out to be quite unpleasant. He recalled how he arrived in the middle of the night and did not know where to stay, and then he was suddenly awakened by a loud scream. Taiga asked with surprise how he managed to get here. No one saw how he came, since there is only one path leading to the palace. He just smiled mysteriously and said that yes, that is exactly how it is. He pointed to a tiny crack and confidently said that he came from there. The hero froze in surprise. He hadn't even imagined that one could crawl through it. But the merchant stood his ground and insisted that it was entirely possible, and the hero was mistaken. He was sitting on a big fish and calmly explained. He simply flew over everything together with it. The tigress couldn't hide her surprise when she saw that he seemed to be suspended in the air. The girls looked approvingly at this. They were impressed by such cleverness and wondered why they hadn't guessed it earlier, and the men laughed a second time. He explained that there was nothing strange here. An ordinary merchant like him could not cross such chasms. This was a task for the mad heroes, and most people lose their composure just by looking down. Treddy frankly said that at first she was also scared, but over time she got used to it, and Mizu still did not trust and remained cautious. The main hero realized that this was indeed a big problem. Earlier it seemed to him that at least from the side of the breach they were not threatened, but this turned out to be a mistake. The kingdom was left completely unprotected. The merchant shared that he had found the perfect place to build a new kingdom, and that was exactly why they ended up here, but the tiger did not immediately believe him. Then the merchant asked if he was worried about possible attacks. After all, now he had become the ruler. He called to look at the wall that had been recently built. Behind it was hiding a completely different kingdom, so quiet and inconspicuous that it could easily be missed. Finally gathering courage, he looked ahead and almost immediately arrows from crossbows flew towards him, and stones rained down on him. It seemed that people did not care at all about what was happening on the other side. And one more thing, the main hero was like a stone mask remaining calm in any situation. The merchant was simply lucky. The hero did not intend to show his true emotions, but if fate decided otherwise, he accepted it without hesitation. He asked Taiga if he really needed this particular weapon. It seemed strange to him, because a crossbow would have been much cheaper. He said that this item could be considered his partner for 20 years already. Latin noticed that it was a bit worn. After that, he asked to tell more about it. The merchant carefully held a rifle, carefully wrapped in cloth, and told an unusual story. According to him, this weapon was never sold a second time once it was forged by a skilled blacksmith especially for the ruler of one of the kingdoms, and it very much resembled the rifle that belonged to the ruler himself. The ruler did not like it, so the item remained with the merchant abandoned and unwanted by anyone. If he can answer, Latin will give this item to the main hero. The main character involuntarily thought that this thing was by no means as impressive as Mizuho's abilities, and even said aloud that it was just a rifle. The spiral-shaped barrel and the rotation of the bullet allowed shooting much farther and more accurately, but special ammunition is needed for this, and loading it is a real hassle. The merchant said with surprise that it was simply incredible, and although his words sounded so casual, as if they had been familiar for many years, he kept his promise. I handed him the rifle and added ammunition. The main character thanked the man and, barely containing his surprise, asked if he was really ready to just give him the items from the black market. Latin denied it. Everything is completely different from what others think. He said that with his knowledge he could invent something much more interesting, then offered to sell this knowledge to him, and immediately after that said goodbye and flew away. Taiga could not believe his eyes. The fish was really rising into the air. Stunned, he quickly turned to the minister and sincerely apologized for his recent recklessness. The girl said she was fine. Knew the boy sincerely wished her only good, so she asked him not to worry about what happened. Treddy laughed at her words, noticing that the girl was actually quite upset, and the girl jokingly gave her a light push. Mizuko admitted that she was a little nervous during the exchange. Trotty asked why she did not mention the necklace, and Mizuko explained that she would not have been able to trade it for anything anyway. In a few days they are supposed to deliver the promised goods. Finally, they will receive the seeds. Now they already have weapons, so tomorrow they will go on reconnaissance. Suddenly a man ran up to them and shouted loudly that the farm was attacked and everyone living there was in danger. They rushed to the hill, and before them immediately opened a terrible scene. Monstrous creatures were pushing people onto carts harnessed by large wild boars. Frightened people cramped in cages begged their ruler to save them, while the monsters smiled ominously and looked directly at him. At that moment the main hero realized. Standing before him was the very same demon scout who had returned with his accomplices. The minister immediately understood. Before them stood a war chariot of demons who had previously kidnapped their people. The warriors instantly took up arms and prepared for battle, and it was then that the monsters attacked them. The main hero decisively said that he would distract the enemies himself, and asked the girls to watch so that the carts would not disappear from sight. It seemed that only part of the entire group was before them, and their true goal had long been clear to everyone. They think only of one thing: how to devour everyone around. Taiga swiftly aimed the bayonet of his rifle at the monster lunging at him. With one accurate strike, he felled the monster. But the next monster rushed at him, swinging a large axe. His blows were very powerful, and he truly seemed dangerous, and both opponents stood facing each other, baring their teeth fiercely and threatening the main hero. Meanwhile, other attackers rushed at the people who were screaming in panic and begging for rescue. Trotty did not lose her composure. She sharply threw her dagger and hit one of the enemies directly. She skillfully used what was around her, easily dodged the enemies, and suddenly struck them, and in the end only she remained on the battlefield. At that moment the main hero deftly jumped aside to avoid the blow of the huge opponent. The enemy swung the axe with a crash, destroying everything around, and the hero mentally noted. There is a bone in the elbow, called the internal epicondyle of the humerus. A precise strike and a sharp pain instantly passed through the whole body. He hit exactly where he wanted, and the monster's snout twisted in unbearable pain. But the main hero did not stop there. He delivered another blow right to the enemy's face. With this, he finally defeated the opponent and pondered how many problems he had already caused. Scanning the surroundings, the hero began to look for others. In the distance, he spotted one of the carts carrying the kidnapped people toward the tunnel. Trotty called to him, jumped onto another cart, and shouted for him to sit next to her. This way, they could catch up with the kidnappers faster. At that time, Mizuho was hurriedly rescuing the wounded, calming them, and skillfully providing first aid, then confidently said she could manage on her own, and that the hero needed to hurry to save others. The main hero agreed, jumped onto the cart, and rushed on to continue his mission. He called out to her that now she would be responsible for the palace's defense. The girl had to make sure everyone was issued the equipment they bought from the merchant. She nodded in agreement and wished them luck and caution. The carriage quickly rolled on. When they went deeper into the tunnel, another cart appeared ahead, rolling further forward. Their own cart had already noticeably become heavier due to the iron cage, and Trotty couldn't stand it. Were they really going to ram that obstacle? Tiger replied that moving so fast was dangerous, he would just climb on top and catch her, and the girl, laughing, said they had to make it to the family meeting. The cart rushed straight at the enemies. When the wheels were nearby, the main character boldly jumped onto the cage. He firmly grabbed the bars, holding his weapon ready, while the opponent was already preparing to meet him. But the main character with one sharp move threw him off the cart. The driver noticed this his companion was left behind, so he sharply jerked the reins. From such a sudden jerk, both carts collided and rushed straight into the stone wall. The monster first growled and laughed when it saw this, but Trotty did not lose composure. She instantly jumped onto her cart, and with all her might plunged a dagger straight into the monster's head. She said bitterly that because of him, they had to go through many hardships. Now he would no longer be able to escape. She confidently put a full stop to this story. She loudly shouted to the main character to stop the cart right now. The hero immediately addressed the people and told them that now they were free. The people could not hold back tears of happiness and began sincerely thanking the hero. It was then that he noticed the wall began to collapse. They panicked and sped up the cart, trying to escape the threat of the ceiling collapse as quickly as possible. The girl already imagined everything about to fall on them, but the man stopped her. It was not about that. In the darkness ahead, he noticed a silhouette aiming a weapon at them. It was a ballista operated by another creature. It froze ready-loaded and prepared to fire again when Taiga loudly shouted that the enemy was preparing for another attack, so everyone needed to hide urgently. The monster aimed again, loaded the rifle with an arrow, and fired directly at their side. The arrow hit one of the boars pulling the cart, and it staggered. While the girl held the cart, moving with all her strength for her, it was important not to stop even for a moment. They had to stop. The enemy was aiming accurately at them. The main character whispered that he would handle it himself, then turned to her and quietly asked if she could unlock the lock. She replied that he really could try, but still did not understand how he was going to reach the enemy, who was so far away. She said she could not imagine what world he was from, but with such a weapon in the labyrinth, he had no chance of survival at all. At that moment, the monster was already swinging again, preparing to deliver the next blow. Avoiding bullets, the main hero mentally noted that the inhabitants of the labyrinth always fear large open spaces, so the monsters later adapted to this feature. He stopped, rolled on the ground, and suddenly realized the target was about 300 meters away. With such a rifle, this was not a problem at all. It would definitely handle it. Their eyes met the main hero, and the monster froze, staring intently at each other, and Taiga remembered how confident he felt when holding a sniper rifle in his hands. Their gazes locked. The monster stood on a ledge where two buildings met, and the main hero sat below on the ground. At that moment, both opened fire simultaneously. An arrow sharply flew towards the main hero, and a bullet hit the target exactly and forced the monster to retreat backward. Taiga decisively accepted the incoming attack and did not hesitate for a second. He remained calm even when the arrow whistled very close. The main hero immediately realized that his opponent was not defending himself at all, and from then on watched him closely, not taking his eyes off until the very end. People could not believe their own eyes. He really hit the target exactly. Some shouted that he was like a real demon. The main hero immediately reminded everyone that the loud shot could attract attention, so they needed to disappear quickly. The enemies were already getting very close. At that moment, the monsters had already gathered together, armed to the teeth. Their main leaders towered on a high cart behind everyone, and suddenly, one of the leaders struck the gong hard. The pack rushed forward. At that time, everyone anxiously discussed whether the monsters had managed to prepare an ambush and whether they were already hiding in their cave. The main hero said that the enemy tried to lure them out by sending the fastest fighters, but the plan did not work. The heroes realized the trap in time and managed to neutralize the bait. The main character was sure that Ballista should be near the main group, but she briefly explained that the enemies were actually preparing an attack on their kingdom. They felt they needed to immediately turn back and prepare for defense. The man gloomily doubted whether the demons could have planned everything so well. The girl quietly suggested that perhaps the demons had a clever leader. He understood everything. This giant was the chief among them. Demons always obey those who are stronger. It seems that among them, finally, the one who best fit the role of leader was found. Moreover, everything was in order with him. Even the carefully prepared carts spoke of order. They approached the matter responsibly, although they had not yet encountered real danger, and suddenly everyone heard a loud gong approaching. which distracted their attention. They noticed the monsters rushing and Tiger immediately understood. This was the first wave of enemy forces, and the man, looking around anxiously, asked what to do next, as there was no chance to escape by cart. The main character said simply and decisively, his main goal is to save them all. He promised to hold off the enemy so they could retreat in time. Trotty exclaimed that this was pure madness. She did not believe that he could manage on his own, but he calmly said that he would figure something out, and then she insisted. If so, she would stay close because she had promised to accompany him. But the main character shouted at her sternly, now this is an order, she must leave immediately. The girl got angry, clenched her teeth tightly, and muttered a curse quietly. So she instantly jumped into the carriage and shouted loudly, as if proving to everyone, she likes foreigners like him, so everything will be fine with him. And Taiga didn't even have time to reload his weapon when the monster was already aiming straight at him. He remembered what the girl had said. Suddenly, an arrow struck the ground right by his feet. At that moment, he firmly decided, no matter what happens, he would stand to the end, because he had no intention of dying here. The monster opened fire. Aginth carriage rushed closer, but the hero managed to hide behind the boar's body. Suddenly, he noticed with surprise that the ballista arrow was made of steel. It was too heavy to be used as a weapon. He tore the weapon from the monster's body and threw it straight at the enemy. The spear hit the legs of the boars pulling the cart, and they immediately stopped, losing speed. The boars overturned and the cart rushed forward at a mad speed. From the strong impact, it shattered into small splinters, raising a cloud of dust behind which the main hero was not visible at that very moment. He was quietly preparing to attack one of the enemies. He cunningly used the fog to attack the monsters. In the thick haze, they could not see their opponent and flailed around chaotically, relying only on sounds. This made the beasts even angrier. But this did not stop Taiga. He quietly approached the monster from behind and struck accurately several times, giving the enemy no chance to defend. When the fight ended, he realized he had to rush to the palace as fast as possible, and unlike the soldiers, free from all excess, running came easily to him. Suddenly, he felt that someone unfamiliar was approaching. This creature radiated a strange, mysterious energy. Could this be the very leader the girl had spoken about? At that moment, he understood. Here was his chance. If he defeated this enemy, the fight would end. Suddenly, a terrible monster jumped down from the ceiling with a deer head, huge antlers, and 2 swords in its hands. They found themselves face to face, keenly waiting for the moment to attack and not taking their eyes off the enemy. He realized that this monster had appeared before him again, and immediately aimed his weapon at it. He had to quickly eliminate this threat with one accurate shot. At that moment, high above, a mysterious figure in a black suit was watching attentively. As soon as the girl stepped into the village, people immediately rushed to her with questions. Was it true that demons had attacked them? They sincerely believed that those taken away were left alive and unharmed. Mizuo warned everyone. No one had any idea how many demons were in this gang. She asked everyone to arm themselves and be ready for the next attack, but some people doubted and said that it would change nothing. They had no idea what to do next. After all, they could be devoured at any moment. It seemed the wisest thing was to run as far as possible, but there was nowhere to run. The choice was one: to die of hunger or become someone's food. The girl asked everyone to calm down, but her words were ignored. At that very moment, Trady appeared from the tunnel and called her, and the minister, seeing Trady safe and unharmed, was sincerely glad. But the girl pondered, why had he stayed exactly in that place? She explained that the boy had deliberately stayed there so they could escape. It was thanks to his act that everything was fine now. Mizuo could not understand how they would manage without the main hero, but Trady assured her. She was returning to him, so everything happening here now rested on her shoulders. She inspired others and called people to remove the cage from the cart together. The minister did not agree. The creators must protect ordinary people, and she could not allow their power to weaken even more. Trady got angry because it all looked like they were going to abandon her husband in trouble. Misako said that if the kingdom disappeared, he simply would have nowhere to return to. Maybe that's why he stayed, to protect the people. She understood that everyone around was worried, but this anxiety did not let go. Their main enemy is not fear, but real demons. They can only defeat evil by sticking together. Standing shoulder to shoulder, they are ready to defend their kingdom. At that moment, the main hero was shooting with all his might from his weapon, skillfully deflecting all the enemy's blows, while Taiga watched him and thought about how truly strong he was. The man just swung the bayonet. The opponent quickly stopped his strike with 2 swords and immediately went on the offensive. At that moment, the man realized, if he lost vigilance even for a moment, this opponent would not miss the chance to destroy him. But there was almost no time left. The monster's blow passed by Nick. The main hero deftly dodged, rolled to the side, quickly got back on his feet, and prepared for the next attack. The man stopped the sword with an accurate shot from the rifle, but the monster instantly drew another weapon and hit him in the shoulder, and immediately after that, the creature sharply flew upward. Looking around, the hero saw that he was surrounded by a pack of monsters, spears and axes threateningly aimed right at him, enemies ready to attack at any moment, and he realized this was a trap with no way out, so he decided to fight to the last and take as many enemies with him as possible. The creature in the costume was closely watching everything around when suddenly, a magical glow lit up in its hand, but something unexpected instantly made it glance in another direction. The main hero sadly told that he had to reduce their number for the sake of others, and in conclusion, he would gladly drink a cup of black tea, but suddenly something above caught his attention. Next to him appeared a girl who with one movement of her hand easily dispersed the crowd of monsters around her. Brightly smiling, she approached the boy and offered her help because she saw that he was having a hard time right now. He asked who she was, and she quietly smiled and introduced herself as a traveling night-winged Astoria. When the shot rang out, she instantly rushed to help and offered her support, and the main hero sincerely thanked her for her care and said with relief that with her help it would be easier for him to get out of this difficult situation. She boldly raised her sword and loudly shouted to the demons, "If you value your life, run away from here." And to those who crave battle, she was ready to accept any challenge, let them attack all together, and right in the middle of her words, without hesitation, she launched an attack on every monster around. She saw only one enemy approaching closer. He swung his spear, but the girl instantly deflected his attack with a precise sword stroke. Now she could only guess who would be next and who would dare to launch a new attack. The monsters did not calm down, they attacked again, and the main hero was not going to retreat. He boldly met every enemy and first rushed at the monster with the deer head. Tego approached the beast from behind and struck it accurately on the legs. From the sudden pain, the monster screamed and fell to the ground. This gave Tego a chance, and he, without hesitation, crushed the enemy's head with one strong blow. The girl enthusiastically praised the main hero for the excellent battle, and he thought that she fought no worse. She warned him to be on guard. New enemies were already approaching, and now these were wild boars with sharp spikes on their heads. The girl explained with a trembling voice that this wizard was much stronger than all the others. At that moment, the monster standing at the very top of the cart began murmuring strange magical words. As soon as he finished, suddenly a powerful explosion thundered. The man with the rifle lost his balance and fell to the ground. The weapon fell from his hands. One of the monsters struck the gong again, and immediately all the beasts came to life and began to move. They decided to act differently. They surrounded the mage with a protective circle and placed crossbows between the shields to shoot at the enemies directly from cover. Taiga hurriedly apologized for dropping the weapon. The girl coldly remarked that if they removed the sorcerer, the rest of the enemies would scatter on their own. She asked if Taiga could retrieve the weapon. He smiled and replied that he could if she distracted the opponent. After a brief conversation, they decided to act together. She said she would start moving toward him along the edge of the cliff, promised to give a signal as soon as the opportunity appeared. He agreed to wait for her instructions. The main hero watched everything happening and could not believe his eyes. It seemed like real magic. He was confused and had no idea how to resist such power. The blows around resembled scenes from a video game, and at that moment, he suddenly noticed the magical staff in the wizard's hands. As if from nowhere, several spheres suddenly appeared above them in the air. The girl quickly warned that these were explosive stars and they needed to run immediately, and in a moment, a powerful explosion destroyed everything around. The main hero started coughing, and the girl anxiously asked if he was okay. The boy assured her he felt fine, asking in turn how she was, and the girl sighed with relief and admitted she had almost fallen off a cliff. She caught that this mage often causes trouble and even possesses forbidden spells. The man asked if she could at least temporarily extinguish the fighting spirit of their enemies. She agreed to help and asked if he had a plan. The boy said he wanted to try one idea. Meanwhile, the monsters watched them closely, staying alert and not lowering their guard. The main hero handed her a jar with strange balls inside, and she asked what this thing was because at first it seemed like candies. They looked funny. She couldn't understand what he meant, but despite the confusion, she agreed to his proposal. They ran off in different directions, skillfully dodging bullets. Taiga said he was starting to act and fully trusted her. The girl promised that this time she would distract the enemy well. In fact, she was so agile that she could even run on walls. She ran up to them and shouted loudly that they were just pathetic cowards. All they were capable of was defending themselves. The mage cast a spell at her, but she deftly dodged and snarled again that if they didn't start acting, she would have no chance to win. The main hero mentally admitted that this lizard was truly scary. It was hard to imagine such a creature living here, and he understood. No one would want to meet it at night in a closed room, even in the worst nightmare. He wanted to show both the mage and the lizard how powerful knowledge from another world could be. In military books, he had read about explosives, for example, how certain chemical mixtures could cause a real explosion. Nitric acid is the heart of gunpowder. There is little of it here, but if everything is mixed properly, it will produce what is needed. He shouted at the top of his lungs, ordering everyone to hide, and then threw a pot with fire towards the hiding place. From the surprise, everyone was confused and scattered in different directions. The girl hung from the ceiling and exclaimed with delight that it was simply amazing. Without hesitation for a moment, she rushed to attack the mage. Her lizard opened its mouth wide, preparing to attack. But the girl missed and the mage skillfully dodged to the side. Without hesitation, he immediately began casting a new spell, and the girl tensed and prepared for his next attack. She instantly dodged the beam and immediately struck back with her sword. The movement was precise, and the enemy was defeated. The sorceress's gaze gradually faded, and all the monsters noticed this, instantly gripped by fear. They fled without looking back. The main hero calmly approached the girl, gave his name, and sincerely thanked her for the rescue. The girl laughed and said it was not important at all, she was really having fun. She winked at the boy, and the lizard looked attentively at the man. She noticed that their nest seemed to have appeared in the ravine, and with a sparkle in her eyes, she suggested they figure it out together and put things in order there. He apologized and quietly said that first he had to make sure everything was fine in his kingdom. The boy sincerely wanted to thank the girl and invited her to visit him, but she just laughed and said not to worry about it. Just at that moment, the lizard suddenly noticed something ahead. The man immediately asked what had happened, and the girl looked closely with interest. What they saw greatly worried them. A giant monster in heavy armor covered with sharp spikes rose before them. Behind him stood a whole army of monsters with spears, swords, axes, and various other weapons. Everyone understood. Before them stood a true ogre champion. His cold gaze did not leave them. Asteria only wondered how the hero managed to become the enemy of such a terrible opponent. The man felt too simple-minded. He and she were completely different as a trans and a manticore. He promised to return to the kingdom and tell everyone what had happened, but only if she would not mind. She agreed and promised that she would definitely come after all. This journey was to face danger face to face. He wanted to tell her about the kingdom, but the girl suggested saving those stories for later to listen to them on the road. She asked the lizard if she would agree to let the man sit on her, and at that moment, the main hero realized that everything happening had long ceased to be just a fight. They were in a real war against demons.